After graduating from the Demon King Academy, he followed every rule perfectly and still got killed by heroes. Because Demon Kings in this world are basically raising heroes instead of defeating them. Easy tower floors, predictable traps, everything exists just to help heroes grow stronger. But after regressing to the past, he decides to abandon the standard Demon King guide completely. Now he's recruiting dangerous subordinates, manipulating heroes, and making sure nobody reaches the top of his tower alive. What happens when a Demon King finally stops playing fair? When reality catches up with you and you can't understand it, it always leads to denial. So Berger Deus realized this reality. The black flames he was so proud of couldn't destroy the heroes. Why does the sword god from the hero's side pierce his chest and heart? He doesn't understand it. He was always a cut above the rest. Entered the Demon King's military academy, became its top student, and graduated with honors. The Demon King standards are a theory established by the first Demon King, who founded the Demon Kingdom. He read it from beginning to end more often than anyone else and followed every point. Based on what was written in the standard, he built a tower and kidnapped the princess. He also developed the heroes who came to rescue her. Their anger and sorrow were the best possible meal for him, the Demon King. Killing them prematurely would have caused trouble. He showed mercy by allowing them to grow up, so he could then eat them. The stronger the hero, the tastier he is. He followed the standards of a Demon King better than anyone else. Conquering this world was only a matter of time. He absorbed the sorrow and rage of the heroes and many ordinary citizens, becoming the strongest Demon King. But why was he the one who ultimately fell? He looked up at the hero and asked how this happened. He chuckled and said that they, Demon Kings, always say the same thing. They bring this outcome on themselves. Why do they always look like they don't believe what's happening? He doesn't understand it at all. Berger called it nonsense, and he said that they always kidnap the most famous princesses and leave clues for them to come and stop them because of the deeds they have done. He pierced his chest with his sword again and mockingly exclaimed, "Is he completely stupid?" In his place, he would have killed the king immediately. Then the kingdom would have plunged into chaos. MC thought that if he kidnapped the king, it would have caused an internal rift due to some people's desire to take the throne. But then their anger wouldn't be directed at him, which wouldn't lead to his development as the Demon King. This goes against the standards. The hero said that that's not all. If they didn't come to the tower, he sent a certain number of monsters to the villages, training them. He could even express his gratitude to him. And if they came, it was even easier. The first floor is filled with a bunch of weak monsters. Everyone can train at their own pace, developing their skills. Berger thought that the heroes can't die halfway to collect more energy. He was extremely careful. That's what the standards taught him. The hero pulled the sword from his chest and pushed him, causing him to open his mouth in a silent scream and then fall. The hero said that when the tower became boring, all they had to do was kill the Demon King. Then a new king appears at the tower, and an ideal training ground for heroes. He turned to the other heroes and asked, "He's right, right?" They agreed with him and shouted joyfully, thanking the Demon King. They all became stronger. He is the best Demon King, even though he is like a godfather to them. This tower was pretty good. They are grateful to him for all his efforts. Thanks for the training ground. MC thought in shock. Godfather, his tower was just a training ground for them? The swordsman raised his sword over his head and said that he was still quite strong. Many heroes died this time, but it was okay. Thanks to this, he became famous. He swung his sword, saying goodbye to the Demon King, and he gritted his teeth in rage and thought, how dare a hero do this to him? How ridiculous to humiliate him like that. What are the standards of a Demon King then? He can't disappear like this. He gathered his last strength and began to rise. He shouted that he was the Demon King, and then his head flew off his shoulders. He saw the smiling heroes who were chatting casually among themselves, the ceiling of their tower, and then the heroes' feet. He said that those who looked down on him would pay. He looked at his body. It began to glow, and the hero told the others not to touch his head. He would take the horns for himself. And then he noticed sparks coming from the Demon King's wound. Berger said that even if he had to give up his last strength, everyone would pay. The hero chuckled nervously. The light grew brighter with each passing second, and he turned to the others, ordering everyone to run. After that, the Demon King's energy gushed out with incredible power, burning everything in the area. MC finally realized that the standards were wrong. If he had only known that because of them, heroes despise Demon Kings, he would not have followed them. If he were given another chance, he would send the standards to hell and feed them to the orcs. His own power consumed him, burned him, and blew up the top floor of the tower. The darkness fell, the Demon King died, but suddenly he heard the professor's voice calling his name. His eyes immediately widened and he was stunned, as he had no idea what was happening. Somehow, he was alive. The professor called him again and told him to come forward and quickly, and he approached him, confused. After that, he looked around. This place was very familiar to him, which made him even more surprised. The director called out to him with concern and asked why such a brilliant mind was acting like this on graduation day. He pinned a red badge to his chest, an item given to everyone who graduates from the Demon King Military Academy, the symbol of the Demon King. Finally, Berger realized he was at his graduation ceremony, which had taken place 15 years ago. All the graduates came out on stage, and he thought that he didn't know why he had gone back in time. But this was his chance. The demon said that the graduates, who would soon become Demon Kings, would now take the oath. Since MC graduated with honors, he asked him to recite the oath as a representative of his lineage. The Demon King's standard with all the rules appeared in front of Burge. First, Demon Kings must build a tower in their destined world. Second, Demon Kings must kidnap a prince or princess. Third, Demon Kings must become villains and cause disasters. They must also leave evidence that they did so. Fourth, Demon Kings must develop heroes and absorb as much energy as possible. Fifth, Demon Kings must spread weak monsters and demonic beasts on the lower floors of the tower, and systematically develop heroes so that they reach the top. MC looked at the thing that would destroy him. He had seen the Demon King's standard so many times that he remembered every word. He did his best to follow these rules, but this trash became a mockery of heroes and led to his death. He looked at the demons who were excitedly awaiting his words and wondered if they wanted him to recite it, to swear to follow it again in front of everyone until the end of his days. He clenched his teeth in rage, and the demon awkwardly called out to him, asking him to recite the Demon King's standard. This only angered him more. He declared that he refused to recite it, and everyone stared at him in confusion. He shouted that he could not swear to obey something so stupid. Following these standards was stupid and pathetic. The Demon King's standard was trash. His words echoed throughout the hall. Dean, who was so proud of his future lord, almost burst his glasses from shock, and the director and the rest of the faculty were speechless. The entire academy was stunned by his statement. At that moment, the top graduate of the Demon King Military Academy became first from the bottom. After that, he was immediately sent to trial. Archduke Alkin Blameth slammed his fist on the table in rage and shouted that he could have been executed on the spot for daring to speak so harshly of the Demon King's standards. But given his exemplary behavior and exceptional talent, he would be given one last chance. He must retract his reckless statement here and now and apologize to the entire demon realm. If he refuses, he will be sent to Aryan. The demons began to whisper. Judging by their conversations, this was a death sentence. In that dimension, demon kings die in droves. Others wondered why they would even give the criminal a second chance. His crime deserved death. How dare he call the Demon King's standards trash? An apology alone would not be enough. The Archduke said that he knew full well what Aryan was like. It was the worst dimension, where many Demon Kings had already fallen. But Berger was not going back on his word. He firmly declared that he would go there. There, he will prove that the standards of a Demon King are trash. The Archduke shouted that he is truly hopeless and pronounced his sentence. He is sent to Aryan immediately. He will not receive any privileges usually given to the best Demon Kings, and he will not be given a single demon as an escort. Until the capture is complete, he is forbidden from returning to the demon realm. He was absorbed into the magic circle and spat out into the sky of Aryan. As MC fell, he thought that this was to be expected after the commotion he caused, and yet he was sent here again. Aryan, the world where the heroes who killed him live. Even before going back in time, he personally chose Aryan. He thought that the strongest like himself should conquer a world of the highest difficulty. This arrogance cost him his life. Too many here take advantage of the weaknesses in standards. He broke the shackles, spread his wings, and landed like a bright comet on the summit of Mount Erzest on the northern continent. He firmly decided that all this would not happen again. This time, he would be the one to exploit the weaknesses in a hero's standards. Gordon Dirick, the top graduate of Demon Academy. On the day of graduation, he was filled with joy and anticipation. While the Demon King Academy trains Demon Kings, the Demon Academy trains those who will serve them. According to the regulations of the Demon Realm, the best demon serves the best Demon King. When they arrived at the ceremony, the demoness ranked second in the rankings smiled and told him that he was lucky to be the best. He will serve this year's top Demon King, Lord Burge. The boy in third place was scolding himself for not studying harder, and Gordon decided to back them up, saying that all their Demon Kings were excellent. He added silently that they weren't as good as Lord Burge. He was from the line of demon dragons, a prodigy born once every millennium, who would forever leave his mark on the history of the demon realm. Graduating in the same year as him was an incredible blessing. With Lord Burge, they could conquer any dimension. He could already imagine standing next to him as a lieutenant, and his eyes lit up with delight. He, too, would be etched in the pages of history. But when Burge declared that he refused to take the standards of a Demon King into account, he was surprised. And when he called it trash, he was shocked. And now here he was, deep in the Erzest Mountains. According to the rules of the Demon Realm, the best demon serves the best Demon King. He hadn't expected this turn of events at all. MC noticed him and said that he had been told that no one would accompany him, and yet they sent one demon. Gordon slowly turned to him, and Burge extended his hand, saying that he was glad to see him. Gordon asked him the question that interested him most. Why did he do that? He didn't understand what exactly he was talking about, and he grabbed his head, shouting that he was talking about the standards of the Demon King. How could he say such a thing in front of everyone? And of all possible places, Aryan? Now he would die here too. MC told him to calm down, or he would pull out all his hair, and he shouted in rage that his hair was not the main problem now. Burge wondered if Gordon had always been like this. In the past, he had been confident and collected. He remembered their meeting after graduation. Gordon confidently said that it would be difficult, but if they were together, they could handle it. In fact, if it weren't for Aryan, he wouldn't have been so motivated. It's understandable, because the situation is completely different. but if he tells about his return in time, he might think he's crazy. Taking a few deep breaths, Gordon pulled himself together, fixed his hair, and apologized for his shameful self-presentation. Since it had to be like this, he would fulfill his duty. The first rule of the Demon King's standards: the Demon King must build a tower, but it must not be hidden or built in exceptionally harsh conditions. Only then will the heroes be able to find it. Gordon said that this is a dangerous place, surrounded by huge mountains. It will be difficult for people to find it and come here. Also, powerful monsters are walking everywhere. He can't build a tower here, they have to move. But MC said that he will build it here. He placed the tower seed in the snow. For the tower to grow, it must be planted in the ground and fed with the blood of the Demon King. Gordon exclaimed in shock that he was going against the standards. He would even throw away the pride of the Demon King? Berger thought he could understand his disgust. As a demon, it's hard to go against what's been ingrained into your subconscious unless you're dead or have a near-death experience. He was like that himself. He clenched his fist until it bled and told him to listen carefully. The Demon King's standards were complete garbage, especially here in Arin. As soon as the seed was saturated with blood, a roar was heard. It glowed, leaped forward, and made a mark on the future tower. MC said it was garbage because Arin was teeming with heroes, and there were too many of them. The mark turned into a magic circle. The tower identified Berger and then began to grow. Watching this, MC said that because of the number of heroes, Demon Kings keep dying here. After destroying countless towers, people realized it operated by certain rules, so heroes used the Demon King's standards against them. Here, that set of rules no longer applies. So much so that it could be renamed Hero Standards. Gordon had no idea what he was talking about and, glancing at the finished tower, thought that he had ultimately summoned it here. Berger first invited him inside. The first floor was completely empty and enormous. Gordon looked around and thought that a typical tower would have an intricate structure or floors filled with monsters, but there was nothing of the sort here. A tower without any frills, fit for a Demon King deprived of his privileges. They climbed to the 5th floor, the throne room. Gordon noted that every floor was completely empty. He had already built the tower, so there was no way to change anything. It was worth following at least the second rule of the standard. The Demon King must kidnap a prince or princess, preferably the one closest to the throne. This will bring in more demonic energy. He turned to Berger and said that he wanted to give him advice. The kingdom closest to the Urzest Mountains is called Korzin. He asked him to kidnap their princess, who is the closest heir to the throne. Let him absorb the kingdom's rage and their sadness to become stronger as quickly as possible. He knows he'll most likely refuse, but it has to be done. But to his surprise, he agreed and said he already had a princess in mind. Gordon got excited and offered to help him, but he said he would guard the tower. The Demon King's residence shouldn't be left unguarded. Gordon was very happy and thought that he was the best Demon King after all. Maybe he was just overwhelmed by the graduation. He can still be saved. Now everything will begin. MC climbed out the window and Gordon asked who he wanted to kidnap, and he answered that he would take the princess from the country farthest from the tower, in the very south of the continent. The princess of the Hildren Kingdom, and the most inconspicuous of them all, the 13th princess. And again, he went against the rules. After that, he set off and under the cover of night, crept up to the princess's window as she prepared for bed. She wasn't the least bit scared when she saw him. He said he had come for her, and she asked who he was. He told her he was the Demon King who had come to kidnap her, which made her chuckle and ask if he was sure he could handle her. He thought it was such a strange question. Were Demon Kings some kind of joke to her? He told her that of course he could handle her, and she held out her arms to him, allowing him to take her. He was surprised and noticed that for some reason she was strangely calm. Was she up to something? She told him that she had always assumed something like this could happen to her because of her status as a princess, and he said that if she hoped that such an approach would lower his guard, he advised her not to count on it. He was also in a dire situation, so he wouldn't let himself be deceived. She said with a smile that she really wasn't up to anything. It was impossible to set a trap without knowing in advance that the Demon King would come for her today. He thought she was right, but he had this feeling of discomfort for some reason. She got out of bed and extended her hand to him, suggesting that they go on their way. Very soon they were already in the mountains. He entered the tower with the princess, and Gordon happily said that he had finally returned. Berger put the princess on the floor, and she happily greeted Gordon, and the king ordered him to give her a corner on the 4th floor. He was surprised that it wasn't a dungeon, and he said that she came with him without resistance, so he wanted to show leniency. They sent her to the 4th floor, and Gordon told the Demon King that he had something to tell him. The princess looked around her new home. She sat down and thought that the floor here was hard and cold. So she really had been kidnapped. There was nothing here. No pillows, no blankets, no servants, no beautiful gardens. Everything is so different from her kingdom, but that's not so bad. Meanwhile, MC learned that he had received an invitation from the Beast Tower. Gordon said it was a welcoming party for the new Demon King. Berger, irritated, said he didn't think so. It was more of a clumsy attempt to confuse him. a newcomer, and assert himself at his expense. He thought that the demon kings themselves were too proud to ally with anyone. However, the unprecedented situation in Aryan forces them to overcome their inhibitions and work together. Before, he ignored them, considering them weak-willed, but this time he should at least try to make contact. So he went to the Beast Tower, where he was met by Draxon, the Beast Demon King. He said that he had ruled this place for 70 years and, measuring him with his eyes, asked if he was the new Demon King. He had heard that he was going against the traditional path, but he seemed somehow unimpressive. MC asked if he was looking for a fight. He thought so. There was no point in wasting his time on this. He should better mind his own business. Draxon laughed and said that he knew nothing. Archduke Alkain told him to keep an eye on him once he got here. Berja asked, was he talking about that noisy old vampire? Apparently throwing him into Aryan wasn't enough for him. Draxon was furious that he dared to speak of him like that. Apparently, he had plenty of courage. He threw a piece of meat he was chewing at his feet and told him to lick it. Then he would turn a blind eye to his insolence. MC asked if he didn't know why he was there. He called him stupid and said that of course he knew everything, because he had spoken disrespectfully about the sacred rules of the Demon Kings. Berje said that according to these rules, Demon Kings cannot kill each other, after which he kicked the piece of meat, causing cracks to appear on the ground, and asked if he really thought he would follow that point. Draxon was frightened by his aura and nervously said that Archduke Alkain had told him to ensure that he successfully kidnapped the princess. If he didn't report the mission within a month, he would lose his authority. MC headed for the exit and said that he was wondering what he would say. He had already kidnapped the princess, but one worthy of himself. They returned to the tower, and Gordon said that he had shown his power magnificently. He said that it was all nonsense, but now he definitely couldn't do anything to him. But they still needed to prepare. Let him check on the princess's condition. He needed to learn how to use her to his advantage. Gordon went on an errand, and he clutched his head and thought that this was problematic. If other demon kings shared the same position, the situation would be even more unpleasant. The consequences of offending the sacred rules were far more serious than he expected. But even if he were given another chance, he would do the same. He jumped up from the throne and thought that it was better to die than bow his head to trash. He would not repeat the same mistakes again. This time, he would rebuild his foundation from scratch. Since he kidnapped a princess of low status, he would gain at most a couple of hundred demonic energy points. But when he checked his status, he was very surprised. It wasn't a couple hundred points, but 13,000. He became nervous and wondered where so much came from. He received a video message from the Beast Tower. Draxon said with a smile that he was sending him his congratulations. Even if their first meeting hadn't gone well, he should at least acknowledge his achievements as a senior. After all, achieving success in Aryan can't be called a cakewalk. He was truly impressed. Was the insult to standards just a cover? Burge's face turned pale. Something obviously went wrong. Gordon ran into the throne room and told him that they had a problem on the 4th floor, and he immediately went there and was amazed by what he saw there. The 4th floor of a tower had turned into a blooming valley, which was still in the process of naturalization. The princess, embracing the spirits of the 4 elements, greeted him with a smile, and he thought in shock. Did she create her own ecosystem in the tower? Only someone who has mastered the 4 elements is capable of this. Only one being on the continent is capable of this. He said that he was definitely going after the 13th princess, but apparently it wasn't her. She said that she thought so. He confused her with Elena. His face turned frightened when a guess occurred to him, and she said that her name was Ernien Hildrun. She was the first princess of the Hildrun kingdom. Meanwhile, an uproar arose in the royal palace. Everyone finally learned of her kidnapping. The king was wildly furious that someone dared to kidnap his precious daughter, and ordered the strongest heroes and all the kingdom's troops to be gathered immediately. They must deprive the foolish demon king of his head and return the princess. The knights loyal to the king had already set off. At this time, Ernien said with a smile that that's why she asked if he could handle her. MC said he heard about a genius elemental mage full of mana and couldn't help but detect this energy. How did she outsmart him? She told him she could hide her mana with this ring. It's a royal family heirloom. She took off the ring and asked if she could answer his question. Does he want to send her away now? He remained silent and thought that he would be laughed at if he sent her back. No kingdom would fear a coward, so it would be difficult for him to collect demonic energy. He would have to go all the way. He received a message about a detected anger directed at him. At the moment, he has 19,000 demonic energy points. He realized that he had already been identified and told her that nothing would change, even if she were the 13th princess. She was still his hostage. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Hildrun, the king was restless and constantly drove his subjects, telling them to immediately return his princess. One of his subjects said that they still don't know which demon is responsible for the kidnapping. They have already dispatched patrols, so he should be patient. The king, furious, ordered them to hurry and find out everything. The princess was kidnapped, and they don't care. His advisor said that something is wrong here. The demon king from the Tower of Lust recently kidnapped the prince of another country. He incurred the wrath of too many people and was killed by heroes. Despite this illustrative example, another demon king kidnapped their princess. Isn't that strange? Everyone immediately understood what he meant. The king gripped the armrest in rage and hissed through his teeth. that this meant there was a new king. A knight ran into the throne room and excitedly informed him that they had found traces of teleportation magic. They were located in the north. The presumed source was in the Urzest Mountains. Meanwhile, Gordon told the king that the Hildren army would arrive here soon. He didn't think it would be too much for them to handle. He chuckled and said everything would be fine. The Hildren kingdom can't get here. The Urzest Mountains are located at the northernmost point of the continent, while the Hildren kingdom is located at the southernmost point. It's impossible for every country on the way to allow a foreign army to pass through their territory. No sane state would agree to such a thing, so they would have to hire a hero from the guild. At this time, the king, seeing how far apart they were, said they had no choice but to contact the Heroes Guild. The Heroes Guild was located in a tower near the mountains, and soon an announcement about the kidnapped princess appeared there. But upon learning that the destination was Urzest, everyone immediately abandoned the quest. There were tons of terrible monsters there, so they were afraid to go there. Berger said that no one in the Heroes Guild would agree to such a thing, since they only cared about money. They wouldn't want to fall into such a dangerous place. That's why he built his base here. Gordon thought, surprised, that he had foreseen this too. He doesn't follow the rules at all, but he seems quite knowledgeable about the world of Aryan, as if he'd been here before. Time passed, and after learning that not a single hero would accept the order, the king became furious and shouted, "Who even called them heroes?" He warily clutched his head, and MC went about his business, thinking that since Aryan has so many heroes, they're more concerned with their own profit and therefore very picky about choosing tasks. Therefore, it will take time to form a suitable group, as we'll get in here. In any case, there won't be enough energy to fight the heroes. He knows this fear all too well. He ordered Gordon to contact Draxon. He plans to sell the demonic energy and exchange it for human money. Gordon agreed, but then realized what he said and exclaimed in shock. What does this mean? That same energy, the coveted currency that allows one to transcend the limits of one's species, unlock the tower's potential, and summon monsters. He wants to exchange it for human money? He said he was sure Draxon would pay a decent sum. He wouldn't be able to stop the heroes with the amount of energy he had, but if he used the money, he might be able to accomplish something. After that, he went to Holton, near the fortress town near the Urzest Mountains. He approached the town gates, and the guards ordered him to stop and identify himself. Bergie told them he was a mercenary, and the guard asked what kind of madman would go to the Urzest Mountains alone. He seemed suspicious, but this suspicion immediately dissipated when Berger gave him a gold coin. They let him through without question, and he looked around, thinking that he couldn't explore the city alone, so he'd first find a guide. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild, the boy turned to the captain and asked if they should leave this place soon. The captain asked, "Why? It's so nice here. The soldiers deal with monsters, and they collect trophies from their battles. What could be better?" Another mercenary asked, "Haven't he heard? The Demon King founded a tower in the Urzest Mountains." He smirked and said that it was all nonsense, as if he didn't know these Demon Kings. They always build towers where heroes can easily reach them. The guy said he heard that he even kidnapped the Hildren princess, and he asked where he had seen Demon Kings traveling to another part of the continent to kidnap a noblewoman. The man asked with a smile, what would he say to the fact that the Hero Guild rejected the request to rescue her after hearing where they would have to go? The captain exclaimed that it was all a show. The princess is the precious heir of the family. It was just a trick to squeeze out more money. They themselves know how greedy they are for money. Suddenly, Berger appeared behind him and asked, "So that's what's going on?" At his sudden appearance, the mercenary captain fell to the floor with a loud scream and exclaimed, "Who the hell is he?" The MC said with a smile that they all seemed well informed. They were perfect as guides. Let one stay, and the rest leave. The mercenaries rushed into battle, shouting that he was the one who messed with them and would not leave alive. MC immediately dealt a blow to everyone, then rushed through the guild, knocking out the rest. A large guy with a hammer jumped at him in midair and slammed him with all his might, but Berger stopped his weapon with his hand, startling him. Meanwhile, the crossbowmen gathered on the second floor, took aim, and MC threw the fat man away, breaking several tables. The mercenary captain, meanwhile, clutched his head, thinking he was a monster. A rumble was heard outside the guild, but no one went in to check, thinking they were just fighting again. Finally, Berger dealt with everyone, approached the mercenary captain, and told him not to be afraid. He would spare him if he answered his questions. He bowed his head, begging for mercy, and asked where the slave market was. After that, the mercenary led him there. MC looked around and noticed that there were only human slaves here, and he smiled nervously, asking if they weren't to his taste. Berger threw him a bag of coins and asked if there weren't any rarer goods here. At the sight of gold, he immediately smiled and led him to another place. MC thought, how can he make such a face, seeing how he treated his subordinates? No, humans want money, demons want demonic energy, it makes no difference. The mercenary captain led him to the basement, and he remembered his conversation with Gordon, who told him that he intended to buy slaves, representatives of other races captured by humans, and elves, known for their conscientiousness, would be ideal. He will use him as a spy to bring chaos to the ranks of heroes. Meanwhile, the hero Helan Cargill arrived at the Hildren Palace. The king greeted him with respect, joyfully saying that he believed that he would agree to this. He replied that of course he would save the princess and bring the Demon King's head in the name of justice. Meanwhile, a slave trader approached Burjay and asked what kind of slave he was looking for. He replied that he had come to buy an elf slave, and pointing to the mercenary, said that this man would pay for him. He became very indignant, and MC threateningly asked if he had any objections. He didn't dare contradict him, and took the required amount of coins from the bag, after which MC asked them to leave the room. He needed to make sure of something. The slave trader hesitantly said that the elf might go berserk, and he told him not to worry. If anything happened, the mercenary would pay for the damage. He clicked his tongue in displeasure and left with the slave trader, after which Burjay opened the cage and approached the elf, saying that such a proud creature had been reduced to a flawed slave. He removed the shackles with magic, and the elf asked, "Is this demonic energy? What business could a demon have with an elf?" He replied that he wanted to give him a chance to take revenge on humans. He remarked that it was a tempting offer, but he didn't trust demons any more than he trusted humans. MC said he was different. If he remained loyal to him for 50 years, he would guarantee his safety and freedom. Half a century wasn't much for elves, and it was certainly better than being humiliated by humans. The elf said he was a demon. His kind wanted to destroy the world tree that the elves worshipped, along with the world it supported. How could he trust him then? And above all, it was strange for a demon to seek help from an elf. He had hit him where it hurt, but he wasn't upset and offered the elf this. He would swear on the great standard of the Demon King that he would fulfill his promise and not lay a finger on the world tree. The elf was surprised. For demon kings, their standard is the same as the world tree. Burjay said that in exchange, he wanted him to swear an oath on the world tree to be loyal to him for the next 50 years. The elf smirked and called him strange, but since things had already gone this far, he agreed. He stood up and told him his name with a smile. He was Granada of the Maple tribe. He would swear allegiance as soon as he saw the Demon King who had sent him to him. MC said that he was the Demon King, which took him by surprise. Of course, he didn't believe him and laughed, asking why a Demon King would come here. They weakened more and more the further they were from their tower. Why would they go buy a slave themselves? If he really was the Demon King, he would swear allegiance to him for the next 100 years. When they arrived at the tower, he realized that he hadn't lied to him. Burjay said that he was now bound to him by a 100-year contract. He shouldn't have thrown words around. Granada exclaimed in shock, "He's really the Demon King?" This was clearly a lie. He never even said it would be so empty. The third floor was literally bare, and the fourth was pure nature. What kind of tower is this, without a single monster? He wouldn't last a year at this rate. The heroes would tear him to shreds. He would never work in a place like this. MC released his energy and asked threateningly, "Have you forgotten? They had already signed a contract." Granada immediately fell silent, and thought that while his tower was completely worthless, none of the monsters from the Urzest Mountains were attacking it, and they were all disaster level. They couldn't risk dealing with them, or rather with the Demon King. Indeed, the Demon King was theirs no matter what. Perhaps he really would get a chance for revenge. He knelt down and said that he swears by the name of the Great World Tree that from now on his loyalty is his for the next 100 years, and thought that since the Demon King came to him personally, he would surely give him an important role. He will take revenge, being part of his evil plan. Burjay with a smile ordered him to cook him food first, which confused the elf. He was supposed to be part of a very important plan, but now he is just chopping vegetables in the kitchen. The princess volunteered to help him and enthusiastically began chopping vegetables. When the food was ready, they gathered in the dining hall, and Granada awkwardly asked the king, "This woman, is she from the kingdom of Hildren?" He answered him that it was Ernian Hildren, and he exclaimed in shock, "Has he completely lost his mind? How could he kidnap the crown princess herself? There is literally nothing in this tower. How is he going to stop the heroes once they get here?" Gordon nodded vigorously, agreeing with every word, and MC said that's why he bought him. Let him sit and eat for now. They started eating. The elf stared at him in confusion, and Burjay said with surprise that he was a good cook. The princess boasted that she helped him, and the elf asked, "What's going on here?" After that, they went to the fourth floor, and Granada asked if he wanted him to fight the heroes here. MC told him that wasn't true. If they went that far, they would be finished, because that would mean they had crossed the Urzest Mountains. He would disorganize the human world in his place. He clarified, he wants him to become a spy. He confirmed this, and said that before that, he must test his skills. He told him with a smirk to attack, and he said that he wouldn't be able to defeat the Demon King in his tower. Burjay said he would only use one hand and not use a drop of demonic energy. Also, if he won, he would reduce his term of service to 50 years. He immediately used magic and said he'd better keep his word. He would take his head off, meaning he would use everything he had against him. He jumped up and ran at Burjay, sending chunks of earth at him. He blocked all of his blows and noted that despite being restrained for so long, his movements were quite good. Did he absorb the mana of the fourth floor or enhance his physical abilities? This is a fighting style suitable for an elf. Granada exclaimed that not every elf was capable of that. He should blame himself for choosing the wrong opponent in the wrong place. Vines wrapped around Burjay's leg and he noticed this, and the elf pounced on him with a smirk, noting that he had plenty of open spaces. Now he would take his 50 years back. MC smirked and said that it could work, but he hadn't forgotten who he was dealing with. Had he? He released his demonic essence and told him not to worry. He wasn't going to use demonic energy. He would control the force of his blow so as not to kill him. The elf became frightened and asked him to wait, and then a roar echoed throughout the tower. Sometime later, at the headquarters of the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild, the captain, already anticipating a pile of money, joyfully greeted Burji, and he said he would like to hire his squad for a year. He agreed without question and asked about the budget, and his squad members were upset. He was sucking up to someone who had beaten them to a pulp. Maybe they should find another job? MC threw a bag of coins on the table, and the mercenaries told the captain that they would follow him for the rest of their lives. Loyalty is what makes them mercenaries. So what if he beat them? He thanked them, confused, and thought that he should assemble a new squad. Burji said that he needed someone to join the squad. He would relay orders on his behalf. He agreed, but the mercenaries began to resent him, since he was an outsider. Granada stepped forward, introducing himself, and when they saw him, also beaten and exhausted, they warmed up and accepted him into the squad. After all, he was just like them. MC glanced at them and thought that even though they looked mediocre, they were mercenaries working near Urzest. There are no other heroes as hardened as him anywhere, not to mention easy to handle. The only hero who can answer King Hildren's call this time of year is Helan Cargill, who defeated the Demon King of Lust. He gave them his first task, to investigate Helan Cargill, a hero hired by Hildren. Afterward, Burji returned to the tower and thought that now that they had handed over the hero matter to the elf, it was his turn to become stronger. Demonic energy points can be used to strengthen the tower or the Demon King himself. The only way for him, having sold all his points, to become stronger is to find a spiritual flower. This is a mana crystal that grows after absorbing natural mana and grants a huge boost in strength after use. In the Urzest Mountains, where harsh mana storms rage and powerful monsters dwell, nature is virtually untouched by humanity. As a result, the spiritual flowers absorb nature's mana over many years, thus making their energy even purer. A spiritual flower found here will be a true treasure. Of course, for demons, this is not as effective as accumulating demonic energy, but it is better than nothing. He told Gordon that he would go in search of the spiritual flower, and he warned him that it was risky to set out without preparation. It would be like looking for a needle in the desert. Monsters are no different from beasts. They will attack him at any opportunity. MC said that he could easily deal with them, but finding the spiritual flower would be truly difficult, and he agreed with him on that point. Gordon said that an excellent mana detector was needed. There was a knock at the door, and Ernian poked her head into the throne room and asked the king if he was busy. Then an idea occurred to them both. She would be perfect as a mana detector. It was time to set off. They left the tower, and Ernian happily said that she was so excited she was really bored. He would keep his promise, right? He would let her decorate the 4th floor to her liking? He confirmed this, but only if she could find a spiritual flower. He thought she had already done it. How far did the princess want to go? Although the very fact of her wanting to somehow transform the Demon King's tower sounded crazy. She smiled. She never thought she would leave the tower. Everything had worked out quite well. Burji took her in his arms and spread his wings, telling her to hold on tight, and she nervously asked him to wait. She wasn't ready. Immediately after that, he flapped his wings, sharply rising into the sky, and she screamed. She closed her eyes in fear, but when she opened them, she saw an incredibly beautiful sight. She looked at the mountains and thought that she hadn't noticed before because it was dark on the day of the abduction, but the world was so vast. Every day repeated itself. Magical training, learning the laws of government, training, learning, and then starting over again. She thought that this would be her life until she died. She smiled and asked the Demon King if he knew that she was the only person who had just flown over the Urzest Mountains. He answered that he didn't care, and hurried to remind the princess of her task. But she didn't let him finish and told him to call her by her first name. They would be together for a long time, so wouldn't it be better to switch to first names? He thought that he had allowed her to relax too much and said that she seemed to be forgetting herself. She wanted to move to the underground dungeon. She asked him for forgiveness, and he ordered her to use her spirits to find the spiritual flower. She sent them out to search, asking them to return safe and sound, and MC thought it would probably take some time, but they would definitely find the flower faster than him and Gordon. Literally a few seconds later, the spirits returned and Ernian said they had found it. The flower was guarded by a huge group of monsters, and Burji noticed that they were slightly ahead of them. He descended to them and majestically said that the monsters were the descendants of demons who had left the demon realm. If they still had a piece of pride left, let them obey the Demon King's order. Not touch the spiritual flower, and just leave this place. The orcs did not listen to the demon's words and were hostile, which made MC laugh irritably and say that Gordon was right. Expecting intelligence from beasts was very stupid. It was better to just burn them. He prepared demonic flame for an attack, and the orcs rushed towards him, shouting that they would protect their own, and they would kill and devour him. Burja unleashed a stream of demonic flame, incinerating the orcs in an instant. Those untouched decided to attack the weakest, the princess. MC didn't even glance in their direction, incinerating them with a wave of his hand and continuing to melt them along with the other monsters. Ernian was surprised to think that Pole's orcs could defeat even an ogre if they worked together, but they couldn't even get close to them. So this is the Demon King's power? Burjay crossed his arms and swung them outward, causing fire dragons to swirl across the battlefield, slaughtering the orcs. By the time darkness fell, they had finished with everyone. Ernian glanced at the flower and delightedly noted how pure its mana was. It was a hyacinth, a spiritual flower with the attributes of water and ice. MC told her not to take it, which upset her, and he said that if she found another one, she could have it for herself. She was very happy, and he thought that people could only perk up if they were given a reward. Unfortunately, they were never able to find another spiritual flower, despite Ernian trying to exhaust herself. They returned to the tower, and he thought with a smile that he initially thought kidnapping Miss Princess was a mistake, but she could prove useful. Gordon distracted him from his thoughts, informing him that he had just received a message from Granada. The hero Helan Cargill, along with 32 other heroes, left the capital of the Hildran kingdom and set out on a journey, but not directly to the Urzest mountains. They intend to follow the standard path of heroes, namely forming a team and growing in strength by fulfilling the requests of villagers. Along the way, they will become stronger. He has prepared several plans for their journey and asks that they read them carefully. He smiled, proud of his work. But Berger rejected all his offers and said that this time they would not send any monsters or hinder their path in any way. Half measures would only harden the heroes, and he should convey the following to Granada. Let him join the procession of heroes along with the mercenaries, assist them, and gain their trust. Gordon said that he should have expected this. He had gone against the norm this time too, but they wouldn't be able to stop the heroes with the current tower, would they? He smiled and told him not to worry. He would definitely fortify the tower with the help of the dwarves. Gordon became very indignant and shouted that a human and a high elf weren't enough. He wanted to drag a dwarf here too. If anyone saw this hodgepodge of races in the tower, they would be laughed at. MC threatened him with his power, and he immediately fell silent. And he said that he never said they would stop them with the efforts of the dwarves. More precisely, they'll need magical devices as well. Let him think about it for a second. The heroes are so accustomed to the Demon King's standards that they open the door to the first floor expecting weak monsters. But what if they're met with dozens of cannons? Gordon considered this. The heroes definitely won't be prepared for that. He immediately dismissed the thought, saying that it was so far from the norm, and as soon as he closed his eyes for a second, the king disappeared. Seeing that he had already flown away, he cursed loudly and asked if there would really be another kidnapping. Meanwhile, in Wolfner, the underground city of the dwarves, the best blacksmith, named Loger Friedri, worked, and he was next in line to be kidnapped by the vile Demon King. Berger arrived at the city gates, was allowed inside, and thought that before the regression, he had fought countless dwarves. But this was his first time in their city. He went into the tavern, gave the owner a few gold pieces, and said that he had come to order a weapon, but did not know where to turn. Where could he find the most outstanding blacksmith in this city? The dwarf tossed the coins contentedly and remarked that, for a human, he was doing quite well in business, and he said that he had heard that dwarves loved money as much as heroes. He said that he was not mistaken. Let him go to the inner part of the city. There he will see a huge hole. When he gets on the elevator, they will check his ID and take him to the right floor. It is a two-stage security system to identify intruders. He did not enter the elevator and went down to the very bottom floor himself. Now he needs to go to the farthest room. That is where he will find the best blacksmith in the city. Finding himself on the very bottom floor, he already began to hear hammer blows. Looking into the room, he saw the blacksmith who was currently busy with work. It was Loger Friedri. He thought that his skill in metalworking was so skillful that it seemed as if mana itself was dancing. Is he the best blacksmith? He crept up and extended his hand towards him, deciding to quietly kidnap him. But his next hammer blow was stronger, causing a stream of flame to gush out. MC was surprised and thought, did he feel this tiny demonic energy? Could this dwarf really be one of them? Loger lunged at him, struck him with his hammer, but Berger blocked it and remarked that he was a hero. The dwarf shouted that he was a hero. Loger Friedri, a blacksmith who possessed the power of heroes. How could a demon dare set foot on dwarven lands? He would not leave this city alive. MC smirked and said that these were too lofty words for such a weak dwarf. He revealed his true nature and grabbed him by the neck, saying that he was not a demon, but the Demon King. Loger began to choke. He dropped his hammer, and the guards immediately burst into the room, asking what all the noise was about, but Loger was already gone. Upon learning of his disappearance, they raised the alarm throughout the city, blocked all the exits, and went searching. By then, they were already on the roof of the building. Berger said that he would kill him if he made even a sound, and he asked what the Demon King was doing here. Did he really come for their princess? He told him that he was not interested in her, and he exclaimed that he was lying. MC said that he heard that dwarven blacksmiths dig excellent underground passages for emergency situations. Let him lead him to them. Loger nervously clenched his teeth and thought that this Demon King, he must have come here because of the princess. Until now, he led a quiet life because he was afraid to fight the Demon King. Why did this happen to him? He is a hero, but very weak. Berger said with a smirk that it seemed he did not intend to talk. What if he kidnaps the princess and lets him go? The selfish hero sold the princess to save himself. If such a rumor spread, how would he appear in the eyes of the other dwarves? Loger exclaimed that he could not stand it. He started calling him a vile and evil brat, and thought that everyone already knew that he was actually very weak. If such a rumor spread, they would definitely believe it, and he would be tortured for the rest of his days. MC asked, so what? Would he sacrifice the princess or go with him voluntarily? Let him choose. Loger thought that of course he would sacrifice the princess, but he didn't want to be tortured. Berja said that if he helped him, he would guarantee his safety. He swears by the Demon King's standard. Loger was surprised. The Demon King's standard is practically a shrine that all Demon Kings worship. He would never break the oath he made on this. He closed his eyes. This decision was difficult for him, but he still managed to make a choice. He smiled and told the Demon King that he would lead him to the underground passage, and he asked what was wrong with his face. It irritates him. Meanwhile, the guards crowded into Loger's workshop. The Princess Louise Werft looked sadly at the bare blade and asked where Loger had gone without making her weapon. The dwarf said they thought he had been kidnapped, and she furiously ordered him to shut up. He was a hero too. Where had anyone ever seen a hero kidnapped? The guard said he was a hero, but also a blacksmith, which was why he was so good in battle. Louise waved her hand and ordered them to find this kidnapper and bring him to her immediately. They rushed to carry out her order, and she, with an evil grin, threatened them that if they didn't find him, she would rip their heads off. Meanwhile, they were walking through a secret passage. All this time, the dwarf's butt was shaking right in MC's face, which angered him greatly. He was already losing patience and threatened him with his fire, asking how much longer he had to look at this abomination. He said excitedly that the passage was too narrow, but they were almost there, so he should be patient for a while. He ordered him to move faster, and finally they emerged from the secret passage outside the city. The dwarf said with a smirk that his work was done. He showed him the underground passage, and from then on he was on his own. He threateningly asked what nonsense he was talking about. The dwarf was very scared and exclaimed that he had sworn an oath on the Demon King's standard, and said that he would guarantee his safety if he helped him. He told him that he didn't care about that trash, and he thought in shock. What kind of Demon King was he? Berje approached him threateningly and asked what he should do with him. He backed away from him in fear, thinking that he should have simply sacrificed the princess, after which he began to bow to him and said that he was very useful. He had no equal in metallurgy. He could forge any weapon he desired. MC asked thoughtfully, is the hero willing to work for him, the Demon King? Loger laughed nervously and exclaimed that he couldn't doubt him. Let him use him as he saw fit. He could even be a spy. Survival was paramount to him. Berje said that if he was willing to swear allegiance to him, he would show him mercy. Loger bowed to him, thanking him for this mercy, and began to praise him. After that, he thought he was a foolish demon. Did he really think he would obey him and become his spy? Of course not. As soon as he got out of here, he would be finished. He would gather a pursuit party, and he would regret letting him go for the rest of his life. Without understanding how, he woke up in the tower, completely shocked by what was happening around him. Gordon clutched his head and asked the king, did he really bring the dwarf? He was a hero, after all. He asked him to calm down, and Granada contacted them, saying that he had a report. Seeing the reinforcements in the tower, he asked in confusion, did he bring a dwarf? MC said that he would report everything to him later. And while Gordon was clutching his head from the whole situation, Ernian approached the dwarf and asked, did he come to save her? Although, that's probably not true. The dwarf was in a daze. He was trying to understand what was happening and turned to the Demon King, asking why he was here. He said that he would let him go. He answered him that he hadn't said such a thing, and he reminded him that he had clearly said that he would show mercy. Berje confirmed this. He was alive, and he asked how he got here then. He answered him that he knocked him out and brought him here. This is a completely obvious move, considering that he didn't know what to expect from him. After his words, the dwarf laughed, his laughter turning hysterical from the realization of the whole situation. MC asked if he was so happy to become his subordinate. He replied with tears in his eyes and a wide smile that of course he was, very happy indeed. Berje praised him for his excellent attitude and gave him his first task, to set up a large number of cannons on the first floor to destroy the heroes. Time passed. Erzest, the base of preparation for the heroes' campaign. Granada went out to the balcony to quietly contact the king and informed him that a rumor was circulating among those preparing for the campaign. They say the new Demon King wields black flames, so the heroes are stocking up on fireproof equipment. They whisper that the Demon King doesn't send demonic beasts because he's scared. MC said it seemed they were determined to kill him, but they won't gain anything from the hero's path. Neither military glory nor wealth. Eventually, they will lose interest and stop developing. It's only a matter of time, so there's no problem. Let him continue observing. Granada replied that he understood everything and thought he was weakening the heroes by not sicking monsters on them. The Demon King is an excellent judge of human nature. Were there ever kings like him before? He was glad he wasn't his enemy. Meanwhile, Berje summoned Loger and said there was one condition. He couldn't use mana stones. He doesn't care how exactly he remodels the first floor, as long as he follows this rule. Loger objected, saying that a trap without mana stones wouldn't work on heroes, and he said he knew this, and so he needed to figure out how to make it work. Heroes are beloved by this dimension, and they are perfectly sensitive to any energy. If you set traps with mana stones, they will detect them even before they are activated. Lodger objected, and he said threateningly that he was sure he had brought the best blacksmith, but it seemed he was mistaken. Apparently, he would have to find someone else. He excitedly exclaimed that there actually was a way, and he said that this was where he should have started. Lodger excitedly told him that he once invented an artifact that hides traces of mana. It takes 3 years to create, but he just happened to have one in the workshop. MC asked threateningly, "Is this how he's trying to escape?" He told him that he was serious, and the king said that he would believe him. He put a steel collar around his neck and said that it was an artifact capable of separating his head from his body, which could be activated with a snap of his fingers. The dwarf was very scared, and Berja put a mask on his face, hiding his face. If he took it off, he would consider it an escape. Lodger exclaimed that he would never take it off, and then they set off. MC visited several kingdoms, buying supplies and mana materials. It took about a month to gather supplies, and he kept everything he bought in a spatial pocket. Then they returned to Wolfner. They climbed into a secret passage. Meanwhile, Louise was smashing everything in his workshop. She threw a board at a guard and shouted that a month and a half had passed, and they still hadn't found him. They were all just worthless idiots. How much longer would she have to wait? The dwarf said the blacksmiths had dug too many tunnels, and each one needed to be checked. But most likely, the intruder and Lodger had already left. She exclaimed that of course they had left. Only a fool would stay here. He had been kidnapped. She grabbed the dwarf by the head and raised it, saying that she was giving them exactly 2 weeks. If they didn't find the kidnapper, they would say goodbye to their lives. The guard excitedly exclaimed that he promised to find them, after which she ordered everyone to leave and let them fill in all the tunnels dug by the blacksmiths. They scattered, and she caught her breath, then looked at the bent blade and said that this was supposed to be her weapon. She crumpled the blade in a rage and asked Lodger to live. He had no right to die until he finished her weapon. The hatch behind her creaked open, and she immediately turned around to see a dwarf. Lodger's face was hidden by the mask. She said it was one of his secret tunnels, and only he knew about it. Could it really be him, Lodger? He smiled nervously, not knowing what to say. And she, clenching her fists, laughed and said that he had returned after all. So he hid because he didn't want to finish her weapon? That's the whole point, right? He tearfully exclaimed that it was all a misunderstanding, and she angrily walked towards him, saying that she had understood everything correctly. How dare he insult the princess? From now on, he was her slave. He would forge her weapons for the rest of his days. He climbed back into the tunnel, and she opened the hatch completely and threatened him with her fist, saying that first, she would punish him for escaping. He tearfully begged her for mercy, and suddenly energy shot out of the hatch, throwing the princess aside. She landed and exclaimed, "Who the hell is he?" Berger came out of the tunnel and told Lodger to take the necessary equipment, and Louise repeated in a rage, "Who is he? Why is he helping this pathetic dwarf?" He answered her that he was the master of this poor blacksmith whom she oppressed, and she pounced on him, screaming that this was nonsense. He was her slave and would make weapons for her forever. Who was he to take it? She dealt him several blows, which he parried, and at one point he changed his stance and kicked her in the face. She grabbed his leg and spat. He didn't expect her to withstand his blow. Taking advantage of his confusion, she threw him against the wall and ran to Lodger, screaming that it was his turn. But MC quickly recovered from the blow and grabbed her by the head, after which they quickly began moving around the workshop, trying to strike each other. Louise Werft, the second princess of the Dwarven Kingdom. She may be a hero, but she has strength. Before his regression, she was among the top strongest, and was much stronger then than she is now. He could finish her off before she reached that level of power, but to do so, he would have to unleash all his demonic energy, and he is now weaker than in his past life. The soldiers could catch him, and considering that he used his power, she now knows that he is the Demon King. While they were fighting there, Lodger was frantically tinkering with the equipment. Bergie landed next to him, startling him, and asked if he had taken everything. He replied that he was just disassembling it. It turns out that the mana concealment device, the mana phantom, was simply enormous. MC asked threateningly, "Is he tired of living? He has 1 minute." Lodger screamed in fear and set to work, and the princess rushed towards them with a creepy smile and asked who gave them permission to do this. Berger told the dwarf that if he couldn't handle it, he would leave him here, and he tearfully exclaimed that he was fast. MC prepared for the attack and thought that he had no idea how long he could last without true power and demonic energy. Their forces clashed, and the princess exclaimed that she didn't know where he came from, but she wouldn't let him out alive, and she would break Lodger's legs so that he wouldn't escape again. He remarked that she sounded just like the Demon King. Let her give up. He would take the blacksmith and the equipment with him. Finally, Lodger disconnected the mana phantom from the hoses and told Berger that he was finished. The princess, furious, called him an idiot and exclaimed, "He came back just for this piece of iron? He thinks it's that easy to deal with?" MC noticed her distraction and took advantage of it to throw her away. She flew into the wall at full speed, and a loud crash was heard, while Berger opened a spatial pocket and ordered Lodger to step aside. Louise then rushed back and shouted that this attack was useless against her, but they were already nowhere to be found. Dwarves ran into the workshop asking what had happened, and she called them idiots. They would have come running even after her death. Lodger had fled. They should immediately follow him into the tunnel. At that moment, an explosion came from the passage, and she, with a sad and innocent expression, asked, "Did he collapse the passage? Was he really that reluctant to finish her weapon?" She hissed through her teeth that everything was shaping up so interestingly and exclaimed that she would personally find him, even if she had to dig up the entire continent. She would make him rue this day. After a while, they successfully arrived at the tower and placed the machine on the first floor. Gordon asked, "What the hell is that?" He had just cleaned up. The princess remarked that the machine was huge, and MC told them it was a magical tool needed to stop the heroes. Lodger informed him that the Mana Phantom's installation was complete, and he ordered him to activate it. After which he said with displeasure that after all the hassle with delivery, he hoped it would be worth it. He laughed nervously and told him that it was definitely worth it. He activated the magical machine, and mana gushed out, raising a wind, after which the tower system informed the king that the Mana Phantom had been recognized. Synchronization with the tower requires 10,000 points. Does he wish to synchronize? He was surprised, as he didn't know about such a function, and gave his consent to synchronize. The system informed him that he had 1,000 points remaining. The Mana Phantom recognizes the Demon King as its master. The Mana Phantom's power source was completely converted from mana to demonic energy. He was surprised and turned to Lodger to find out what was going on, and he exclaimed with delight that it wasn't his doing. He couldn't even imagine that merging with the tower was possible, and the power source changed from mana to demonic energy. This is a discovery of the century. Berger wondered if even the creator didn't know about this. He headed to the exit of the tower and asked the princess to use a spell. She clarified that she could use any spell. He confirmed this, and she joyfully raised her hands, using magic, and Gordon exclaimed in horror that he had just left. He grabbed his head and asked her to stop this atrocity. And MC left the tower and thought that usually the use of a spell of such a scale inside the tower should be noticeable even from the outside. But when he was outside and looked into the tower, to his surprise, he felt nothing and saw nothing, as if there was a veil there. In fact, he didn't even feel a single presence. Is this the power of the tower, synchronized with the Mana Phantom? He decided to test what would happen if he controlled the tower in this state. And as soon as he used demonic energy, the tower disappeared before his eyes. He used the energy again, returning the tower, and thought, does this mean he can hide the tower at will? True, this takes away demonic energy points. 137 points were taken from him in one go, so using it right now would be difficult. But in the future, such a function would definitely be useful. Returning to the tower, he found Lodger completely excited. He asked him for permission to disassemble both the machine and the tower into parts. That is, simply to study them. He had never heard or seen anything like it in all of history. Let him study this historic discovery. Berger remarked that he looked like a demon eager for a fight, and said that if his trap destroyed the heroes on the first floor, he would let him do whatever he wanted. Lodger was very happy and swore to him that he would definitely sweep away those sneaky heroes. Then he ran with a skip to his creation, and MC approached the princess with a proposal. Let her meet the heroes who will go up to the 4th floor. She asked in bewilderment. He wants her to fight the heroes, but she's a princess. He added that she's also a genius spirit caster who doesn't want to return to the royal palace. She remained silent because he was right, and he thought that perhaps it was unwise to give her such a role. She's an innocent princess who doesn't know how the world works, so betraying her people might be too much for her. But it turned out that it wasn't like that. Right now she was thinking hard about what to fight with. He dismissed that thought and said that she only needed to confuse the heroes. Let her just show them that she's an enemy. If all goes well, he'll give her what she wants again. She said that she'll look for the right moment, but she has one condition. Let him introduce her as the Demon King's subordinate, not as a princess. He raised an eyebrow in confusion and agreed, which made her very happy. After that, she asked how she should fight. Should she use her appearance to seduce them? She's good at that. She winked at him, and he asked her to just do as he said. After that, he returned to the throne room and began to take care of business. The preparations were more or less complete. They would reduce the number of heroes with mass-produced mana cannons on the 1st floor, and finish them off on the 4th, using the princess as bait. And yet, this wasn't enough. In his current state, he wouldn't be able to destroy even half of the heroes, and there were more than 200 of them. Would he really have to become stronger himself in the end? He took out a spirit flower contaminated with demonic energy, and thought that such things were especially effective against demons. He needed to collect more, so he and the princess set out to search, which only pleased her. Time passed, they came to the place where mana was felt, and Ernian said, disappointed, that there was nothing there either. MC said that this was already the 3rd try. Maybe they were just lucky last time. He called her spirits useless, for which they began to attack him, and an orc approached them, but showed no hostility. Thinking they were about to attack, Berger used energy and said that he was already tired of them. Suddenly, the orc knelt before him and said that he, Krutu, the chieftain of the Blue Frost tribe, greeted the Demon King and asked him to accept their tribe into the ranks of his kind. The other orcs also bowed to him, asking him for this in chorus, and MC asked the chieftain if he wanted him to accept them as his kind. Krutu said that their ancestors were demons who betrayed the Demon Kingdom. Since they bear this original sin, let him grant them the honor of serving him. Berger told him to stop, to save such sweet talk for later. After all, he just wanted to become stronger by becoming a kindred spirit of the Demon King. Besides, demonic energy suited him better than spiritual flowers. Krutu said that he truly saw through everything, so there was no point in delaying. He called his subordinate, who handed the Demon King a chest of spiritual flowers. MC said that now it was clear why they couldn't find them. He was well-spoken, prepared, even knew how to negotiate, and was unusually intelligent for a pole orc. Krutu replied that to survive in this harsh land, their tribe had chosen wisdom over strength as companions. Berja handed the chest to Ernyan and asked why he had sought it out to become stronger, because he lacked strength. He nodded, confirming this, and MC smiled, wondering if wisdom was more important than strength. He extended his hand to him and cast a spell, saying that he liked him, but he would only accept him. His body was consumed by black flames, leaving the mark of the king on his skin, and he told him to wander the snowy fields, raise his tribe for him, and await his commands. In the future, he would reward him with something far greater than strength. His tribe would live forever. Krutu grew horns, and overall, he became more impressive. He was now the Demon King's kin, for which he was immensely grateful. He swore that they would be eternally loyal to him, and his tribe cried out in unison. So now the tower is in full battle readiness. Outside the tower is a legion of pole orcs. On the first floor are Loger and 60 mana cannons, and on the fourth floor is Ernyan Hildren. Now all the pieces are in place. He is ready to meet the heroes. He will repay them in full for his humiliation in his past life. Soon the heroes were in the snowy lands. Heelan smiled and told Granada that they had finally arrived, the Erzest Mountains in sight. They stopped in Holton to rest before the final push, and a sumptuous feast was held in their honor. Heelan and Granada sat at the same table with the lord of the fortress, and the hero thanked him for this magnificent feast. Heelan smiled and said that he was flattered, and it was a great honor to be on the same page of history with him. He thanked him for his kind words, after which the lord of the fortress suggested that he give a speech. Heelan became embarrassed and began to beg him. After all, this was exactly what everyone was waiting for, and besides, it would raise morale. Heelan could not refuse, and the lord of the fortress joyfully called out to the heroes, saying that Heelan wanted to say a few words. They all looked at him with smiles, and he, awkwardly clearing his throat, addressed his comrades in arms, heroes, nobles, knights, mages, mercenaries, merchants, and everyone else. Their long-awaited campaign had finally reached the finish line. Perhaps the Demon King was cowering in terror, seeing the march of the heroes under the banner of justice, for he had not sent a single monster to meet them. But they would not let their guard down. The preparations were complete. They were completely ready. Tomorrow would come the long-awaited day when they would make this insolent Demon King pay for his arrogance and for kidnapping Princess Ernyan from the kingdom of Hildren. Who were they? Who were the true masters of this world? The time had come to remind them of this once again. He raised his glass to justice, and the warriors joined him with a joyful cry. Granada did not share their joy. As the Demon King had predicted, the number of heroes had not increased, but it had not decreased either. Heelan's popularity had allowed the expedition to progress so far. He had managed to enlist the support of the merchant guilds and subdued the mercenaries who were about to desert, forcing them to follow him to the end. The last time he had seen the tower, it had been completely empty. Would it collapse under such an onslaught? Maybe he should attack the heroes from behind right now? He immediately dismissed the thought and wondered what he was thinking. If the expedition succeeded, he would finally gain his freedom, and that was in his best interests too. He clutched his head, trying to compose himself, and Heelan noticed his strange behavior. After that, Granada went out for some fresh air and to send a report. He contacted the king and informed him that they had arrived in Holton, and that they would begin the ascent tomorrow after replenishing their supplies. MC told him not to contact them again once they left Holton. He also needed to keep an eye on a few things. When they climbed the mountains, he should be wary of snow, not let his guard down at night. And lastly, when they opened the tower gates, he should stay as far away from it as possible. He nervously asked what he meant, but Berger had already hung up, and suddenly, Heelan approached him with 2 glasses of wine and asked why he was standing here all alone. Granada shuddered in fear and answered that he just went out for some fresh air. Did something happen? Heelan gave him a glass and offered him a sip of wine, a fruity variety that elves love so much. He thanked him, and he noticed that something seemed to be eating at him. He asked if he thought they could really defeat the Demon King. Heelan laughed and asked if he was nervous. He told him that he really was, and he honestly admitted that he himself did not know. People trust him and follow him, but storming the Demon King's tower is always pure hell. Never has an assault gone smoothly. Granada smiled and asked, but didn't he kill the Demon King of Lust by absorbing his power? Compared to him, the Demon King should be easy prey. By the way, no one knows exactly how he defeated him. Maybe he could tell him his heroic story? Heelan's face darkened. He forced a smile, and told him that this was only possible thanks to his brave comrades, like himself, who always fought monsters boldly. He patted him on the shoulder and confidently told him to go ahead and cover his flank. If they joined forces, victory would be theirs. Granada smiled, agreeing, after which Helan led him back to the banquet hall and said that the lord of the fortress was eager to hear the story of his adventures. Granada walked forward, and Helan glanced at his ring with a sinister grin, thinking that he would fight shoulder to shoulder with his brave comrades. The elf must take care of him this time too. Morning came. The army of heroes set out, and the city's inhabitants saw them off with honors. Very soon they were already in the gorge of the Erzest mountains. Their path was easy. One of the warriors said that he was worried that they would have a hard time getting through these mountains, but it seemed like there was nothing special here. His comrade agreed with him. There was practically no snow, and the sky was clear. At this rate, they would reach the tower without incident. It seemed the goddess of victory was on their side. The man laughed and said that they had been told that there were disaster-level monsters everywhere here. Did they hibernate or something? The guy next to him said that even the monsters were trembling with fear near Helan, and suddenly some sticky liquid fell on his head. He looked up to check what was going on, and saw ghouls on the top of the cliffs, and warned the others about it. He was very scared, since they were quite large, and Helan immediately gave the order to maintain battle formation. They mustn't panic, let them protect those nearby. The gorge is very short. He called out to the knights, telling them to cover the mages and retreat, and they engaged in battle. The ghouls were several times larger than them, and were simply overwhelming them, and one of the heroes, Wharton, warned Helan that a frost giant was ahead. He immediately ordered everyone to retreat. They moved to a relatively safe place, and Helan, seeing this huge giant, ordered Wharton to take the people out of the gorge while he dealt with the giant. Helan worriedly asked, was he going to fight him alone? He assured him that everything would be fine, then jumped high into the air, ending up above the giant, and with a smirk said that he could never match the strength of the Demon King of Lust. The giant extended a hand towards him, but missed and hit the wall, and Helan landed on his forearm. The giant began slamming his hand against the wall, trying to hit the hero, who used his hand to get closer. Gathering his strength, he chose the right moment and delivered several blows with his sword, after which he landed nearby and ordered his army to flee right then and there. The mages remained to cover the knights, and they rushed through the resulting loophole. Meanwhile, the giant lost consciousness, falling to the ground with a crash just as they were running out of the gorge. They stopped to catch their breath, and one of the warriors said that there were dozens of ghouls here and a frost giant taller than the cliffs themselves. This is simply madness. Humans do not belong here. His comrade said that even the previous tower wasn't this scary, and another guy noted that despite this, the casualties were surprisingly few. If Helan weren't here, things would have been much worse. They say he killed the Demon King of Lust and absorbed his power. Could his powers really be comparable to the Demon King's? The warrior asked. Since he had already defeated the Demon King, shouldn't he have become even stronger? They agreed with him. If they trusted this hero, they would have nothing to worry about. After listening to their conversation, Granada thought that Helan really could crush this Demon King. They continued on their way, but orcs were waiting for them above. Wharton noted that they had no time to rest, and Helan said he sensed demonic energy, the Demon King's minions. Krutu called them foolish humans and welcomed them to the Erzest mountains, and Helan told his comrades that they were easy opponents. He would deal with them in an instant. Granada heard a suspicious sound, and remembering the Demon King's warning about the snow, nervously wondered if this really meant it. The orc leader threatened that none of them would reach the tower, and they saw an avalanche descending on them from the peaks. And Granada wondered how he was supposed to protect himself from this. The Demon King was a crazy idiot. The avalanche caused everyone to become confused and panicked, and Granada, in fear, ordered everyone to flee. MC, meanwhile, watched everything from his throne, and seeing them die in the avalanche, he smirked and told the heroes that this time he would hunt them. He warned Granada of 3 things. First, to be wary of the snow. After the avalanche, they began searching for the missing, and Helan decided to set up camp there and search for the heroes buried in the snow. Second, MC warned Granada not to let their guard down at night under any circumstances. When the moon rose, they were attacked by giants and ghouls, which the orcs had deliberately herded toward their camp. Granada, defending himself from them, constantly cursed the Demon King in his thoughts. Watching this, MC smirked. During the day, an avalanche awaited the heroes, and at night, a horde of monsters, and this cycle repeated itself endlessly. 3 days had passed since entering the Erzest mountains, and the party's numbers had decreased from 511 to 256. The group of heroes finally reached the top of the highest mountain, but the tower was gone, leaving everyone confused. Helan exclaimed in rage, shouldn't he have built the tower where the heroes would find it most easily? Why wasn't it here? Wharton said they were surrendering. Helan turned to him in surprise, and he said the heroes' campaign had failed. He was sorry, but their lives were more valuable to them. Helan was annoyed, but there was no way he could stop them. It was the 6th day after entering the mountains. They finally found the Demon King's tower, hidden in a basin, with 52 of them. The heroes were furious and determined to fight the monsters on the first floor. Thirdly, Berger warned Granada to stay away from the gate when they opened it. As soon as they entered the first floor, they were met by a multitude of mana cannons, which they clearly didn't expect. The cannons dealt with the heroes in one fell swoop, ultimately reducing the party's numbers from 52 to 1. Seeing that he was still alive, MC smiled, and noted that even that wasn't enough to kill the hero Helan Cargill. He withstood a powerful blow, and even broke all the cannons. Confused by what was happening in this tower, he shouted in rage, "What's wrong with this Demon King? Everything is going wrong." Granada peered into the tower and called out to him, and he worriedly asked if he was okay. He replied that he had barely dodged that attack, and Helan said with relief that it was good that he was here, that they would go up to the next floor right now. He asked in confusion, "Just the two of them?" He replied that he was a hero who had defeated the Demon King of Lust and absorbed his power, so the new Demon King was no match for him. Besides, he was more than enough. Granada followed him, and they went up to the second floor of the tower. It was empty. The same thing awaited them on the third floor. Helan nervously gritted his teeth and said that this place should be teeming with monsters, but there was no one here. Something was clearly wrong with this tower. Anything could happen at any moment. Granada's face darkened, and he thought that if the second and third floors were completely empty, then they would have no problem reaching the king. Having reached the fourth floor, Helan was in complete shock. He looked around and asked in confusion. The previous floors were also empty, but the fourth floor was a whole forest? Were they really in the Demon King's tower? Granada cursed silently, and with a heavy sigh, answered that it didn't look like it at all. And suddenly, Ernian's voice rang out, saying that they had finally managed to get here. She was one of the 4 heavenly kings guarding the Demon King. She, a dark spirit summoner, would be their opponent. Granada felt ashamed of this theatrical performance, and he wondered who she even was. Helan called out to the princess in bewilderment and asked why she looked like that. She, slightly nervous, answered that she was not a princess, but a dark spirit summoner. After that, she raised her hands, combining the magic of the 4 elements, and told them to understand the power of darkness. Helan, shocked, said that this was the highest-ranking spirit magic, wielded only by Princess Ernian, and that it couldn't be used if controlled from the outside. Pol had orcs, an avalanche, night ambushes, a tower hidden in a hollow, mana cannons at the entrance to the first floor, empty second and third floors, and now a crazy princess to boot. He laughed hysterically, saying he didn't understand anything, then cursed furiously and repeated that he didn't understand anything at all. The princess was attacking the hero who decided to save her? Fine, then he'd just destroy everything here. He drew his sword, ready to attack, and MC, appearing behind him, asked if he thought he could do it. He threw a clot of his energy at him, causing an explosion, and said that at least he could now see his face. Helan managed to block his attack and said that he had finally arrived, but he couldn't believe that he had snuck up on him from behind like a coward. He was already running low, he needed his strength, and so he began to look for Granada. He was standing behind the Demon King. He reached him in the blink of an eye and touched his shoulder, offering to join forces. Granada was confused, and then he felt his energy draining from his body, and he looked exhausted. Because of this, he fell to the ground, exhausted, and Helan asked with a smirk, didn't he tell him? As long as he was next to him, they wouldn't have any problems. It was all about his ring. MC realized what kind of artifact it was, and Helan said with a smirk that it was a forbidden treasure. The Elf Devourer. It converts the elf's infinite life force into mana. The only flaw of this treasure is that after activation, the elf dies quite quickly. He put his foot on Granada's face and asked, he doesn't mind, does he? After all, it's for the greater good. He used his last bit of strength to call him a scumbag and a hypocrite, and MC said with a smile that he liked how low and vile he was. So, if he just took off this ring, he'd become a weakling again? Helan smiled madly and called him an idiot, telling him to try if he could. Even the Demon King of Lust couldn't pull this ring off his finger. As soon as Berger said Gordon's name, the hero's hand separated from his body. At first, he didn't even understand what happened. Only when he felt terrible pain did he let out a heart-rending scream and exclaim, how did this happen? He didn't even sense his presence. Gordon said that he was too loud and ignorant for a human, after which Helan jumped away from him, increasing the distance, and thought, is this a high-ranking demon? Even with the artifact, some demon defeated him? The MC, who was already behind him, placed a hand on his shoulder and threateningly said that he wasn't going anywhere. Helan turned around, thinking he should dodge, but just looking at the Demon King, he felt a wild fear and helplessness. He realized he couldn't do it. Who was this Demon King? The MC gathered demonic energy and swung, saying it was time he got what he deserved, and then dealt him a blow that shook the entire tower. Thus, the hero was defeated, but he survived even such a blow. The MC looked at him and said that it was impressive. He ordered his subordinates to tie his hands and throw him in the dungeon, along with the rest of the people lying at the entrance, and let him forbid them too. Granada, meanwhile, was in a very bad way. He had already seen the afterlife, and Berge fed him a spiritual flower, saying that he had done an excellent job. As soon as the mana filled his body, he came to his senses, and was surprised to notice that he was completely healed. He glanced at the Demon King, who was giving the spirit flower to the princess, and wondered what had happened. Had he really wasted such a valuable item on it? MC contacted Loger, and said that he had also worked hard, so he would grant him permission to dismantle the tower. The dwarf was overjoyed and began to thank him, after which he told his vassals that everything was finished and that they should return to their floors and clean everything. He left, and Granada watched him go, noticing that even after such a fierce battle, he seemed completely unperturbed, as befits a demon king. Ernian touched her chin in confusion, and the elf asked if something was wrong. She answered that she simply thought the demon king was tired. As soon as he returned to the throne room, MC immediately lay down on the floor and caught his breath, thinking that it was close. He can't show his weakness, and yet this man, Helan, he has the power of one of the 10 stars. The 10 stars are the 10 strongest heroes on the entire continent. Helan Cargill is one of them, but is considered one of the weakest. In fact, in this life, he almost never spent demonic energy points on strengthening himself, partly because he almost doesn't have any. If Helan were in perfect form, he wouldn't have been able to defeat him. His plan exhausted him, threw him off balance, and made him panic. Because of everything that happened, his vision became clouded, and he opened himself up to a strike. In the end, his crushing blow hit its mark. So far, he has achieved a flawless victory, rejecting all the rules of the Demon King standard. Something like this had never happened in the past. He managed to successfully change his fate. He will be able to change the future, and he will take revenge on these heroes. Meanwhile, Draxon learned that the heroes gave up because they couldn't find the tower, and journalists bombarded the Wharton hero with questions, shouting that investors demand an accounting. Who will answer for this failure? He nervously answered them that they have not lost yet. There is still hope. Sir Helan Cargill and the great hero have not given up. They are still searching for the Demon King's tower. Therefore, if they give them a little more time, they will definitely find it. News of the new Demon King quickly spread across the continent. King Hildren was furious and began to blame Helan for everything. He bragged so much, and now what? If he doesn't save his princess, he will execute him. The Dwarven princess didn't care about the hero's campaign. She only cared about Loder. As a result, history was distorted and overgrown with rumors. They say Sir Helan Cargill never returned. Some even say he's already dead. The world was plunged into deep mourning, and because of this, Burge's demonic energy points accumulated at an incredible rate. Soon, the Wharton hero was summoned to the Heroes Guild headquarters to learn more about the campaign. They asked if his words were true. He swore on his name that he spoke the pure truth, and the heroes said that in that case, the matter was taking a serious turn. However, as long as the identity of the new demon hero remains a secret, they must exercise caution. Helan Cargill is one of the 10 stars, and he won't be easy to defeat. They will wait another 10 days for news of him, and if nothing changes within that time, then all the heroes of the continent, numbering 4,728, will launch a full-scale offensive and destroy the new Demon King. Meanwhile, MC arrived at the underground prison. He approached Helan's cell and asked if he was awake. Even the speed of his recovery was astounding. Helan looked up and said that since he'd left him alive, it must be because he wanted something from him. He shouldn't beat around the bush and speak directly. MC smiled and said that he was pleased to see him open to dialogue. He wanted him to become his vassal. Helan stared at him with a smirk and confusion and asked, "Is he serious?" MC threw a bag full of gold coins in front of his cell and asked, "A hero's quest costs a fortune, doesn't it? Provisions for hundreds of people, guards, lodging, membership fees, armor, weapons, and even first-class elixirs. These expenses are usually covered by investments from merchant guilds and aristocrats. If the Demon King is defeated, the heroes' lives change forever, but if they fail, they find themselves buried under debt. Such is the fate of heroes who live on the investments of others." This time, all the funds were concentrated in the hands of one man, the captain of the hero squad, Helan Cargill. Helan thought he was right. Even if he broke out of here, he would be branded as a disgraced hero, and he would be forced to hide from creditors for the rest of his life. He asked how he knew this. Granada said that he was the one who told him about it, and Helan indignantly exclaimed that he had betrayed them, and he responded in rage. How dare he say such a thing after how he had treated him? He was simply a con man, and besides, he had been on the king's side from the very beginning. MC entered his prison cell and said that the reason for his failure was that they had never encountered a demon king like him before. Just as he had crushed all the king's standards, they would soon adapt and find a way to clear the tower. However, if one of the most powerful heroes secretly interferes with these plans, will people really be able to succeed? He took out the Armani sphere, and Helan, suspecting the worst, asked what it was. He replied that it was a magical tool for monitoring his subordinates. Once inside the body, it instantly attaches to the brain. He will immediately recognize if he shows hostility towards it and can smash his skull to pieces with a single gesture. If this sphere does not take root in his body, he will consider it a refusal and kill him. However, there are plenty of suitable heroes. Helan asked him to wait. Heroes of strength like him are immune to mind control magic. The moment the sphere is inside, it will simply disappear, and it will not be his fault. Granada, with an evil grin, said that the hero can dispel his mental defenses at will, and Burgess said that he heard him perfectly well. Helan became angry and calling him a mad elf exclaimed, "Aren't you ashamed?" He responded with irritation, shouting that he should be ashamed. Helan said he would simply waste the precious artifact. He would never submit to the Demon King. MC forced his mouth open and ordered him to shut up and swallow it. then shoved the sphere down his throat, knocking him unconscious. Time passed, and Granada remarked that he was terribly stubborn. What would he do if he chose death? He told him not to worry about it. An ordinary person who treats his comrades as expendable for the sake of profit would never sacrifice himself for money. Indeed, Helan did not reject the orb and became the Demon King's vassal. MC returned to the throne room. Gordon said that although he made Helan his vassal, his actions would be severely limited due to a colossal debt of 100,000 gold coins. Previously, he had exchanged about 2,000 gold coins for demonic energy points, an amount comparable to the annual budget of a small state. How does he plan to raise the rest? He said that it seemed like the time had come to receive word. He was talking about the Demon King's meeting, which is held once a year at the Unity Tower. He reflected that in his past life, he had never attended it, finding the very idea of an alliance of Demon Kings disgusting. He said that the other Demon Kings had existed in Arrane for a very long time. They must have accumulated a lot of gold and treasures. Gordon exclaimed indignantly. He wanted to exchange his demonic energy points for money again. That was what he would have said in the past. But facing the heroes face to face, he realized that if they followed the Demon King's standards, they wouldn't be able to stop them, and he would have to admit it. He received a message, and he immediately excitedly informed the king that an invitation to the Tower of Unity had arrived, and he grinned contentedly, saying that they would head there right away. They were going to fleece his senior fellow Demon Kings. Now Gordon believed him implicitly, even though he had renounced the demon standards. Soon they were at the Tower of Lies. Berger went up to the 13th floor to the Demon King's hall and noticed that everyone was already assembled, although he was not even late. Did they really have topics to discuss without him? Draxon Doldorf, the Demon King of Beasts, was at the meeting. Frost Demon Reyna Saldane, Demon Queen of Winter, Titan Ugar Belva, Demon King of Invincibility, and Demon King of Lies, Jason Cogmundo. Some criticized him for daring to disregard their standards, but Jason, on the contrary, greeted him with a smile. MC called them pathetic fools and asked, did they decide to form an alliance? Do they really know no shame? He thought that, of course. He understands that given the situation in Arrane, this is a very pragmatic choice, however. Because of his words, Ugar got angry and exclaimed that he himself was a fool. Who was he to interfere in their affairs? What did he even know about Arrane? MC mentally noted that just a couple of simple provocations and all his thoughts were at hand. He clearly wants to kill him. He asked, and he calls him a fool? He is the only one here who is worthy of being called elite. Ugar angrily said that it seemed like he was seeking death, and since that was the case, he would grant his wish. He smiled and told him to try and take the risk, and Jason clapped his hands, immediately restraining them both. He reminded them that they were gathered here for cooperation, so they shouldn't waste their precious time. MC glanced at him and thought that he had made the killing intent of 2 Demon Kings evaporate in the blink of an eye. How did he do it? He didn't sense any magic. Was it his own power or the power of this tower? They both took their seats, and he wondered if it was the power of his tower. Wasn't it akin to phantom mana? Well, he shouldn't jump to conclusions without evidence. He needed to stay on his guard. Jason suggested that they begin the meeting and asked everyone to speak their minds freely. Berger noted that this meant that nothing special would happen at this meeting. Draxon said that since the others had nothing to say, he would begin. He turned a furious gaze to Berger and asked, where is Helan Cargill? His face darkened for a moment, then he told them everything. Meanwhile, in the minion waiting room, the demons were questioning Gordon about what had happened. A minion of the Demon King of Lies asked what had happened to the hero. Was he dead? Gordon nervously answered that he didn't know. He hadn't even crossed the threshold of the tower. Most likely, he was still wandering in the Urzest Mountains, so they shouldn't ask him about it anymore. A minion of the Demon King of Invincibility told him not to talk nonsense. He should have noticed their tower from afar. Gordon said that was not true at all, and the demoness asked in surprise, could it be that the rumors weren't true? His Demon King had completely abandoned his standards? Gordon thought that everything was exactly as the Demon King had said. If others asked about Helan, he should say he knew nothing. Since he will be their spy, stealth is of the utmost importance. But it is still strange. Even though he now understands that he was right, he still has some accumulated grievances, and so he decided to spill all his emotions and shouted that this Demon King is just an obnoxious brat who doesn't want to listen to anyone. If he turns away for a moment, he will immediately get into trouble. Why doesn't he just do everything himself then? He smiled widely. He didn't understand why, but his soul felt so light after these words. To his surprise, the rest of the Demon King's minions supported him. It turns out they were facing the same thing. Listening to them, Gordon shed a tear and realized that he needed emotional support. Meanwhile, MC finished his story and Ugar asked, does he think he will believe it? He means that Helan Cargill didn't reach his tower only because he didn't build it on the very top? Is he mocking him? MC told him he was free to build his tower wherever he wanted, and Jason pointed out that this meant the heroes were still targeting his abode. And yet he left the tower undefended and came here? He, of all people, surely knew what fate awaited a Demon King who failed to protect his tower. After all, he was the top student. MC told him not to worry about his tower. He was protecting it in his own way. His words were starting to irritate him, and Jason smiled and said that since he said so, he wouldn't ask him about it anymore. Draxon asked if he thought Archduke Alkeen would approve of such a thing. Berger responded by asking who cared what that old fool said. He indignantly called him a brat rat and he asked if he'd said anything wrong. Draxon decided not to pursue the argument, and MC thought that even if he lied, they would have nothing to refute it with. It's better for them to suspect him than to find out the truth. He mustn't forget why he's here. His goal is to obtain 100,000 gold coins. So the Demon Kings continued their conversation. Instead of arguing, he listened to them attentively. So even among the Demon Kings, there's a clear hierarchy, and the King of Lies undoubtedly occupies a high position. He listened to them, collecting information and figuring out which kings are running low on demonic energy. Then Reyna glanced at him, and he realized she wanted to talk to him. They went out onto the balcony, and he immediately asked what was going on, and she said she wasn't going to tell him anything secret. She simply wanted to talk to him alone, ever since she heard about him. She agreed with him on some issues. He was surprised by this and wondered if she had said something similar in her past life. Reyna said that she wasn't like him after all, and didn't disdain standards. On the contrary, she lived by them. However, she believes that they need to be more subtle, especially here in Arene. That's why she wanted to meet him. She figured that a private conversation would be much more productive than trying to reason with these idiots. He smiled and asked what she thought of him. She remarked that he was not bad and looked better than she imagined. He didn't understand whether it was an insult or a compliment, and she gave him a personal transmitter so that he could contact her if he needed advice. As long as he didn't trample on the Demon King's standards in her presence, she would be on his side. She finally found someone to talk to, and she hoped he wouldn't die too soon. She was about to return to the hall when he asked what about the Demon King of Lies. She told him that he was completely impossible to read. However, he was still better than those two idiots. She left him alone on the balcony, and he thought that he couldn't fully trust her yet, but she was an unexpected acquisition. Meanwhile, in his tower, Ernian came down to the first floor and asked Loder to try the cookies she baked herself, and he asked in surprise how she managed to bake them here in the tower. She proudly told him that the Demon King bought her the ingredients, so she tried making cookies with the help of spirits. He noted that being a genius spirit caster seemed quite convenient, and she asked him to try her cookies. He thanked her with a smile and thought that the princess, who had never done physical labor in her life, baked the cookies personally for him. Whatever they tasted like, he would say they were magnificent. But as soon as he took a bite, he felt an incredible taste. It was so delicious that his very mana began to move. He had never tasted anything like it. This must be what heaven tastes like. She asked if he liked it. He answered her blissfully that he couldn't tear himself away from these cookies. What kind of miracle did she perform? She answered him with a proud smile that she added a little spiritual flour to the dough, and she was glad that he liked everything. She expected nothing less from her cookies. He was surprised and asked why she spent something so precious on cookies. No wonder he was filled with mana. She answered him that it was a gift so that they would be just as close in the future, since they had a long journey ahead of them. He was slightly confused by her words, and she asked if he thought Granada would like the cookies too. He answered her that he was sure he would like it even more than he did. And she happily asked, what about the Demon King? Does he think he will like it too? At this time, MC returned to the meeting room, and seeing only Jason, asked if everyone had left yet. He replied that they had already finished their conversation and offered him some tea, if, of course, he had anything else to discuss. MC took his seat and asked, perplexed, what he should discuss alone with him. Jason smiled slyly and said that he knew he needed human money. He was surprised, not understanding how he knew about this, and cautiously asked what he meant. Jason said that pretending not to understand what they were talking about was useless. Draxon told him about it, and he suggested that they not waste their time on meaningless mind games and make a deal. He would gladly accept demonic energy points in exchange for human gold. Berja took his time and asked what was in his favor. He laughed and asked what he meant. He was on his side, so he offered him to start normal friendly relations from now on. MC returned to the tower with a bunch of bags of gold and showed it all to Helan. He told him to take his 100,000 gold, and he was shocked to notice that he was truly rich. MC told him to make sure he could present it properly, and that the source of the money must not be revealed. He thought that if Jason could track the money, he would understand what he was up to, and then they could become pathetic puppets in his hands. Until he understood what he was planning, he had to act with utmost caution. He showed him the warriors and said that he had turned the remaining members of the group that attacked his tower into black knights and mages. That guy in the center was Amon. He was from the Golden Moon Merchant Guild. He had learned about it when they signed the contract. Let him use them to multiply the initial investment, and they would follow all his orders. The warriors, meanwhile, were uneasy. They still couldn't believe that they had become the Demon King's servants, and in their thoughts, they begged Helan to save them from this humiliation. Helan said that since the group had survived, the expedition couldn't be considered a complete failure. He would pay off all his debts. Does this mean he can continue his hero activities? He extended his hand to the Demon King and called him partner, saying that given the current situation, things weren't so bad and that he looked forward to further collaboration. Hearing these words, the warriors were greatly surprised, but MC was angered by his calling him partner. He affected the thing in his head, causing him to writhe on the floor in pain, reminding him that they weren't partners. He was his slave, and he was his master. The warriors gloated at him, and Helan, breathing heavily from the pain, mockingly said that he hadn't thought he had such tastes. Burgess said that he wasn't asking for his sincere loyalty. Let him go. The Demon King left, and while Helan was recovering, the princess approached him and asked if he could deliver a letter to her younger sister, Elena. He asked if she meant the 13th princess. It wasn't impossible, but why did she suddenly side with the Demon King? She understood that he was in this situation because of her, didn't she? She asked him for forgiveness, but now she had no desire to return to the kingdom. She was sure that a hero of his rank knew about the royal family's secret. Helan thought there were rumors about this, but he didn't know it was true. In that case, the princess's actions were somewhat understandable. He told her that he understood everything and left. Meanwhile, Gordon came to the king and asked if this hero would obey his orders. Helan replied that Helan wasn't the kind of person interested only in money, even if it wasn't outwardly apparent. He didn't see that obsession with money in him, but he wasn't exactly a model of nobility either. He assumes that Helan dreams more of popularity than honor. Because he wants to stand out, he takes initiative in everything he does. If they can control him properly with the Armani sphere, he could become the best spy anyone could dream of. Gordon was surprised that he had studied humans so well. He couldn't afford to fall behind him now. MC added that if the hero were to destroy human society from within as the Demon King's vassal, it would be a spectacular sight. His subordinate enthusiastically agreed, and there was a knock at the door. The princess peered into the throne room and offered the king a taste of her cookies. He noted that she had been visiting this room frequently lately. If the sweets weren't tasty, he would send her to the underground prison for a month. She smiled smugly and told him to try it first and then judge, and he bit into the cookie, thinking that human desserts were bad, but was immediately surprised by the incredible taste. Ernian remembered Lojer and thought that this was the reaction she was expecting. But MC restrained his delight, although it was difficult for him, and said that it was quite good for a human. She was slightly surprised by his reaction, and he asked if she had added a piece of a spiritual flower to it. She happily confirmed it, and said that she knew he would notice. He asked, so she was returning the reward he gave her? It seemed she needed something. She laughed and told him that in fact she did need something. Meanwhile, the participants of the Helan expedition safely descended from the mountains under the protection of Krutu. Having arrived in Holton, they immediately set off back to the kingdom of Hildren, using a teleportation magic circle. As for Granada, he went to restore order at the headquarters of the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild. He beat everyone up to teach them a lesson and angrily asked if they had fled during the first snowstorm, leaving only him, their captain, in the camp. The former captain of the squad nervously answered that it was not so. After all, they had gone to the Irjust Mountains, a place where even heroes die. How, in his opinion, were they supposed to hold out there, mid-ranking mercenaries? They had no choice. They only wanted to survive. Granada was furious that despite this, they decided to abandon their captain, and was about to hit them again. But a girl called out to him. He turned to her and she said that they had finally met. Her name was Kade, and she was a hero. She was unable to join the previous expedition for personal reasons. However, she had come a long way to take advantage of this opportunity, even though she had arrived late last time. Will he let her join the quest? Granada was surprised by her, and the mercenary happily said that while he was gone, she was the one paying their bills at the bar. Would he like to join them for a drink? He immediately restrained him, telling him to freeze in place, after which he approached the girl and said that he appreciated that she paid for them. But the quest of the hero Helan was already over. He and his team had already returned to the kingdom. Hearing this news, she was very surprised, and said that this could not be. Then could he ask him to tell her about how everything went there? He answered her that he could do at least this much for her, and thought that he would tell her exactly what the Demon King allowed him to say. When he finished the story, Kade said that it was incredible. So the Demon King's tower was not built on a hill? In that case, there was nothing keeping her here anymore. She was grateful to him for taking the time to tell her. She placed several gold coins on the table, telling him to consider them her humble thanks, and left. The mercenary immediately took all the coins for himself and said that just by looking at her, one could immediately tell that she was a newbie who didn't know how things worked in the world. She would be lucky if her colleagues didn't let her down in the near future. Granada ordered him to immediately remove his hand from the money. Kade, meanwhile, was just walking away from the guild, and he noticed several knights following her. This seemed strange to him, and he decided to investigate. They surrounded her in an alley and began to persuade Her Highness to return. Her fiancé was waiting for her. She firmly refused, saying that she wanted to live the life of a hero, and Granada, cautiously peeking around the corner of another alley, activated the mask on his face and thought that he decided to follow them, because they moved along the street almost silently, although they were all dressed in full plate armor. So this hero is the princess. Since these were the internal affairs of the kingdom, he decided not to interfere in it, but as soon as he wanted to leave, the knight brought a blade to his neck and asked who he was and why he was following them. Besides, he uses strange magic. The elf became nervous. He received this artifact from the Demon King, and if he was caught, they would quickly realize that he was his vassal. The knight asked, is he a spy from another kingdom? Then he would kill him. Granada became very nervous and mentally turned to the Demon King, saying that it seemed he was in trouble. What should he do now? There was an explosion. He ran out of the alley, and the knights immediately turned towards the noise. The knight nevertheless withstood the explosion and ran out of the cloud of smoke, shouting to the others that there was an assassin here, and they couldn't let him get away. They immediately stood up to protect the princess, and Granada thought that he was the only elf here. If he used the abilities of his race, he would be exposed. But if he didn't, he wouldn't get out of this mess safely. The knights shielded the princess, telling her to stay behind, and she drew her sword and exclaimed that she was a hero too. They pounced on the assassin. Granada became nervous and thought that they left him no choice. Even if he was discovered, he would have to use his power. Just as he was about to use magic, Berge appeared and said that he was wondering why he was late. He instantly incinerated the knights who attacked him and asked, "Is he having fun here?" He asked indignantly. So he, even seeing his condition, called this fun? He responded by asking why he was whining over a few scratches that a junior spirit could easily heal. Seeing the Demon King, the knights immediately rushed into battle to protect the princess with their lives, and she told them not to worry about her. She had a perfect chance to catch him. MC said in surprise that he didn't know there was a princess here, and the knights pointed their guns at him, telling him not to lie. Why did he come if not for her? Granada noted that this was actually an excellent question. Why was he here? He answered that he was doing some business nearby, literally passing by, and the knight exclaimed, "The Demon King is doing some business and accidentally ran into the princess? What kind of blatant lie is that?" Some time ago, when the princess brought cookies, he asked what her request was. She told him that she needed Senuel powder, and he asked if it was used to make contracts with spirits. She confirmed this, and he thought that hundreds of years ago, an elf named Senuel swore allegiance to the human king. He gave her an order to create something that would simplify the process of people making contracts with spirits, and that's how Senuel powder was born. He told the princess that with her talent, she didn't need the powder. Isn't that true? She looked down in disappointment and said that he was overestimating her. There was practically no mana in the tower, and without Senuel's powder, her spirits were weakening. He told her to stop pretending. She wanted to make a contract with a new spirit, a great one. He was right? She looked away, hesitantly answering that maybe that was true, and he said that he knew it. In his past life, Princess Ernion had made a contract with a great spirit at the age of 27. This news shocked the entire continent, because people rarely managed to make contracts with great spirits. This time, she wanted to acquire a great spirit 7 years earlier? Had living away from the palace for several months really changed her that much? His tower would become stronger, so it didn't matter. He told her that he liked her baking, and that she should wait for his return. At the moment, he directed demonic energy at the knights, and said that, however, as he said, he had his own business here. He decided to end this quickly. His blow immediately knocked the princess's helmet off her head, followed by a powerful explosion. Seeing that she was alright, he noted with surprise that a hero remains a hero in any situation. Kade defended herself with her knights. She said that a hero's aura has the ability to destroy the power of demons, which is why heroes are the natural enemies of demons. Here, she is no longer constrained by the stifling walls of a golden palace cage. Here, she is a hero on the battlefield. She swung her sword, using a high-ranking swordsmanship technique of the Zespin house, the Crescent Strike. She thought it was a unique technique that instantly releases aura, capable of cutting an enemy into pieces. This special swordsmanship art is passed down only to members of the imperial family. Her line of succession is one of the last, so as a princess, she has no special value. She remembered her fiancé and thought furiously that this didn't mean she was just a commodity to be married off to an old pervert. Well, she couldn't marry such an old man. That's why she prayed to their family's instructor to train her. Day and night, she trained tirelessly to be recognized as a hero, not a princess. And if she could catch this Demon King, then she would definitely be recognized as a capable hero, and she could be free from her father's decree and his attempts to marry her off to another old man. She would choose her own husband, but Berge destroyed all her dreams just like her sword technique. He shattered it, noticing that she had a pretty good blade aura, and she stared at him in shock, not believing that her special technique was stopped so easily. A huge magic circle appeared behind the Demon King, summoning black flames, and Kade realized that she couldn't defeat him. He said with a grin that it would be extremely useful. There were many ways it could be used. She was very scared. The knights rushed to protect her, and then screams and explosions were heard. The townspeople immediately came running towards the sounds. They felt demonic energy and were extremely surprised that demons appeared here in Holton. They saw knights at the site of the explosion. Fortunately, they were still alive, and so the townspeople called for healers. One of them whispered with his last strength that the Demon King had captured the princess, and the man exclaimed, "He was here!" But the knight could no longer answer them, and they, seeing black flames around, asked if this was really the work of the Demon King from the Urzest Mountains. At this time, MC returned to the tower. He threw the princess into an underground prison, And while she was unconscious, Ernian asked, "Is her name Senuil?" MC told her that she was the 9th princess of the empire, Kade Zespin. From now on, she will live on the 4th floor. She is slightly injured, so let her treat her. If she is raised properly, she can be useful. Ernian agreed to do this and wondered why he needed another princess. He answered her that he was just passing by and decided to take her. Moreover, in order to gain demon points, he has to kidnap princesses from time to time. She did not understand what points he was talking about, and he was about to explain everything to her, but stopped himself in time and thought, why is he telling his prisoner secret information? And why did he even start talking about this? He left the prison cell and told the girl not to worry about it. He will bring her Senyole powder. He cursed and thought that he sees her too often, so he began to get used to it and let his guard down. He needs to pull himself together. The princess is just his prisoner. Sometime later, news that the 9th princess of the Zespin Empire had been kidnapped spread across the continent. The Heroes Guild headquarters summoned Helan and asked if he could swear that his words were true. He replied that he was ashamed to say so, but he truly hadn't found the Demon King's tower and was prepared to bear full responsibility for this failure personally. One of the heroes said he shouldn't worry about it. If they treated heroes like that, who would even dare to launch a new expedition? He thanked him for his words, and they explained that after the expedition's failure, the Demon King had kidnapped the 9th princess of the Zespin Empire, so they demanded action from them. Helan had been to the Urzes Mountains before, and they were interested in his opinion on a possible new expedition. Helan said he felt sorry for the princess, but even he couldn't find the tower. Instead of immediately gathering a new expedition, he thinks it wiser to first gather and send a scouting party to discover the tower's location. After that, attacking the tower will be much easier. If this Demon King were confident in his own strength, he wouldn't have built his tower in some secluded place, trying to hide it. They agreed with him. His words made sense. A strong Demon King has no reason to hide. Although this contradicts the typical Demon King, if he is a cowardly weakling, he won't pose much of a threat to them. The most senior of them remained silent. He thought about everything and said that in that case, taking into account Sir Helan's advice, expeditions there are prohibited until the location of this Demon King's tower is determined. After that, Helan headed for the exit and thought, is this what he wanted? Did he want to use his authority to postpone the expedition? He bought him time, so he must handle the rest himself. Time passed. Gordon told the king about Helan's successes, and he ordered him to continue to monitor him. After that, he thought they were preparing for a full-scale assault with their entire force. If it weren't for Helan, things would have been bad. He made the right decision by making him his vassal. Outside the tower, Helan and Granada are acting in his interests. Using them, he can buy himself time. By capturing the new princess, he has significantly increased his demonic points. If he uses the Armani sphere on her, he will have a decent combat unit. The dwarf is rebuilding the first floor of the tower, strengthening it, and Krutu is expanding his personal influence among the orcs. And as soon as Princess Ernian forges a contract with the Great Spirit, the tower, which expeditions of ordinary heroes would not dare storm, will become a problem even for elite troops. And only then will he finally be able to turn his gaze beyond the mountain and begin his bloody retribution. He will punish the heroes who once killed him, but to do this, he must first obtain the notorious Senuel powder. To do this, he will have to go to a place where powerful wizards and even heroes live, the city of science and magic, Amor. He stood right in front of the city, covered by a huge barrier, and cursed. How can he get the powder without getting caught in the process? The difficulty level is off the charts. In this city, there is a small shop located next to the largest magic market in the kingdom, and it is called Jetson's Paradise. The shopkeeper was reading a newspaper, outraged by the news of the princess's kidnapping and the failure of the expedition to find the Demon King's tower, and also a hunt has been declared for the dwarven hero Loger. And where is this world coming to? The door opened, MC entered the shop, and Jetson, immediately putting down the newspaper, asked with a smile what he wanted to buy. He told him he needed Senyol powder, and mentally noted that it was a strange shop, somehow suspicious looking. Amur is a city known for its advanced and scientific magic, so heroes, mages, and alchemists from all over the world flock there. In other words, almost every shop here is sure to have a hero or mage shopping for their needs. That is, even if he hid his demonic energy, there would still be a high risk of being discovered and caught. For this reason, he was looking for a small and inconspicuous shop. Jetson placed 2 vials of purple powder on the table and exclaimed that he was incredibly lucky. After visiting his shop, he would never need to go anywhere else. He was willing to sell him Senyol powder for a special price, just 1 gold coin, which was very cheap. Berger asked him to stop shouting and pointed out that the price was not cheap, and the powder should be green, not purple. The man told him it was a new variety. This version of the powder is secretly produced by the Magic Tower. It's never sold on the market, so it's a very rare item. If he doesn't buy it now, he won't get a second chance, because half the city is chasing this particular variation of sensual powder. He smirked and thought that he looked like a nobleman who, for some reason, was forced to hide the fact of his purchase, and therefore he would shake all the money out of him. MC was furious. He realized that he knew he couldn't go to another store and was trying to scam him. Maybe he should just kill him? The bell rang, and another customer entered the store, irritably asking why they had even come to this junk shop. Realizing who it was, Burji was terrified. It was Princess Louise herself, who had come here in search of Lojer. Her loyal warrior said that if Lojer is wanted, he would hardly go to a popular place, because they are looking for him everywhere, and she said that she would never have thought that she would have to visit such a cheap store, and all because of him. Her guard approached the store owner to find out information about Lojer, and MC looked at the girl and thought that there was no mistake. Nasty character, rough voice and hairstyle, it was definitely Louise Werft. She does not recognize him because he used a mask to hide his identity during the fight with her. Jetson asked, so they are looking for someone? He is so sorry. He has memory lapses due to a bad mood when he can't sell anything. Louise got angry and exclaimed that this human idiot was mocking them, after which she threatened him with a dagger and said that he seems not to understand the whole situation. He dares to extort money from her? He raised his hands in fear and reminded her that murder was strictly forbidden in the City of Magic. She couldn't do that to him. If she was going to threaten him, then let him at least buy something. How about this deal? She got even angrier and called him crazy, and he nervously said that if she bought something, he would be happy and his memory would clear, but she could be punished for it. There was silence for a few seconds, and then she laughed loudly and said that he was funny. Let him show her his goods. He showed her a vial of purple powder, and said that it was aura powder. She knew that it worked very well on dwarves. For only 3 gold it would be hers. MC was furious. He said that it was sensual powder. Louise said that it was a great price, only 3 gold. She threw the coins on the table, for which he was very grateful, and she asked if she could now inquire if a dwarf named Lojer had visited him. He replied that he had never heard of him. However, he could have stopped by the blacksmith's quarter, which was located nearby. This place is extremely famous, and any self-respecting blacksmith would definitely visit there upon arriving in this city. Maybe someone had seen him there? Louise told the guard that they would go straight there, then nodded to Burji, apologizing for the disturbance, and left. MC approached the shopkeeper and noted that he was a master of deception, having sold her this thing for 3 gold pieces, and he had the courage to deceive customers like that. He smiled and said that it was good that he had kept quiet. She looked like a young lady from a noble family, so he considered 3 gold pieces not to be a very large sum for her. Besides, in the end, they did not kill him. He tossed the coins in his hand and said that he saw that he was interested in his small business. For a modest fee of 10 gold, he was ready to let him in on all the intricacies of his business. MC mentally called him an idiot, but he was incredibly good at everything that involved deception, and he liked it. He ordered him to go to the Golden Moon Merchant Guild. If he said that the mountains sent him, they would accept him. The man asked, what is his connection with Golden Moon, and what is he even doing there? They are bankrupt after all. MC asked, is he doubting it? He thinks he will have to go there because of the customer he just deceived. After all, it was Louise Werft. Hearing her name, the man dropped all the vials from his hands and asked in horror, was it that crazy dwarven princess? And what does he want in return? Burji threw a coin on the table and told him that he had already told him everything. Let him enter the Golden Moon, and his salary will be 1 gold coin per month. If he refuses, then he will bring Louise here. Jetson immediately clasped his palms together, begging him not to do this, and then asked with a smirk, he didn't think he would say something like that, did he? He swiped the coin off the table in anger and exclaimed, does he think he can be fooled so easily? Let him leave here and drag that princess here if he dares. Why would someone like her even visit his store? MC left the store and a few seconds later returned with an enraged Louise, and the man realized that he had screwed up. Once he was taught a lesson, MC finally got the powder and left the store, thinking that even normal stores only sell regular senile powder. Louise approached him and said that it was good that he was still here. Thanks to him, they returned the counterfeit product. He told her that he was always happy to help. Could he ask what she had done with the owner of that shop? She clenched her fist in anger and told him that, unfortunately, the laws of another country applied here, so she was only teaching him a little lesson. Otherwise, she would rather have ripped his heart out of his chest, so he would know how a deceived lady feels. Her guard wiped away his tears. He had no idea how angry she could be. Berta's face turned slightly pale and he thought that she was still the same, not changing at all. And then an idea occurred to him. He asked, wasn't she looking for a man named Lojer? Was he a blacksmith? She asked excitedly. Did he know where he was? He showed her the necklace and asked if this thing was somehow connected to him. The guard exclaimed that this necklace was the work of Master Lojer, and MC told them that 2 months ago he met him near the Ormus forest. He was hungry and traded it for food. That's how he got the necklace. He decided to keep it for himself because it seemed valuable to him. Louise clenched her fist, containing her anger, and said that she was in his debt again. If they were at her house, she would be obliged to invite him to a glorious drinking bout for at least 5 days and 5 nights. The very thought of it made him sick, and as a token of gratitude, she gave him a token of her kingdom, and said that they must catch him before he got too far, and let him take this. He could exchange this token for the best quality equipment in her kingdom. He thanked her for such a gift, after which they left, and the guard asked the princess what they would do now. She answered that she would contact Her Majesty and ask for her help. This time, Lojer definitely wouldn't leave. MC watched her go and thought that after his reincarnation, he had been too busy and avoided the typical life that a demon would indulge in. He must not forget his past life experiences. He knows that even before his regression, Draxon found and absorbed the heart of a mythical beast, which allowed him to become much stronger, and this is exactly what he needs now. Because he is still a young demon king, he cannot fight Louise one-on-one. Moreover, she is well equipped. Such a fight will be very difficult. Therefore, in order to take revenge on the heroes who killed him and survive in this world, he must become stronger. He sent Louise to Ormus, to the tower of the Demon King of Beasts, the furious heiress of the Werft clan against Draxon Doldolf, the Demon King. While they fight each other, he will take advantage of the opportunity and take the heart of the mythical beast for himself. After fusing the tower with the dwarf artifact, it acquired two new functions. The first is the ability to use the tower remotely. The second is the transfer of items. He contacted Gordon and informed him that he had an unforeseen situation and was entrusting the tower to him for now. He transferred Senual powder to the tower, using the new function, a whole 10 pieces of the highest quality, all so that the princess could forge a contract with the Great Spirit. When she received it, she was surprised by the excellent quality and asked if the king really had to go to Amor for this. Gordon replied that the powder would naturally be the best available. His Majesty the Demon King went to get this powder personally, so she should use it with caution. Regarding Princess Kade and her behavior, she remained on the 4th floor. Berge also tasked Gordon with training her. She must be an excellent swordsman to use her full power, and he would definitely test her skills personally upon his return. When they trained, Kade shouted at Gordon that she would make him regret deciding to train her, and he told her to reach him with at least one blow before throwing around such words. On the 1st floor, MC installed a hellish forge so that Lojer could continue upgrading the tower. When he saw his new workshop, he was completely delighted and promised to do everything to the highest standard. Now, the Pole Orcs, Krutu managed to unite 3 tribes, doubling his troop numbers, and this was enough to begin hunting most of the monsters inhabiting the Urzest Mountains. Having learned all the news, he ended the connection with Gordon and thought that now he could manage the tower without even returning, a very convenient feature. Now he needed to contact Helan, but he called him first with very good news. Establishing control over the Golden Moon Trading Guild was complete. From this day on, the guild would be led by Amon, the Black Knights, and the Black Mages. He, one of the 10 strongest heroes, would support them, so the position of leader would later be passed on to his son. He also managed to ensure that one failure had no effect on the reputation of the 10 heroes. Berge praised him for his excellent work and, going into Jetson's shop, ordered him to convey a message to Granada. He would provide him with funding through the Golden Moon Guild, and he would use the money to buy all the elf slaves on the continent. And he'll also send someone to the guild, a con man named Jetson. He'll be useful to them, so let him get involved. Jetson, hiding under the table, trembled with fear and covered his mouth to keep quiet. And MC said that this idiot even had the nerve to deceive Louise Werft. He glanced at the table he was hiding under and said that he'd already found out everything he could about him, so if he didn't show up at the door within a month, he'd send an assassin after him, who would simply clean up any unnecessary contact. After that, he left, and as soon as the door closed, Jetson could finally breathe. Meanwhile, Granada was training mercenaries and received an order from the king. He was surprised that he ordered the ransom of all the elves and promised to gather them as quickly as he could, after which, he thought that saving his brothers and sisters from slavery was good, but he was literally dragging them into the clutches of the Demon King. Most likely, he wants to use them, like him, as spies. Did he really hand this task over to him on purpose? One of the mercenaries, meanwhile, whispered to the deputy commander and asked if they were really learning elven fencing. He answered that he didn't know at all. This elf ordered them to perform this exercise. Do they have any other options? He was also so tired of constantly bragging about being several hundred years old. The mercenary said that the captain didn't seem to be here. Maybe they could take advantage of his distraction? The others agreed with him. The deputy commander became nervous, but still agreed with them, after which they, continuing to make sounds as if they were practicing, quietly left. Granada didn't pay attention and thought that being under the Demon King's command was clearly better than remaining a servant to humans his entire life and dying such an inglorious death. Of course, he noticed that they decided to leave, and as soon as he waved his fingers, the second in command found himself tied with vines, and he exclaimed that he was wrong and begged for forgiveness. Let him just not humiliate him in front of his own people. The others immediately took up swords and continued training, and he indignantly exclaimed, why was he the only one being punished? Helan heard the noise and asked what was going on there. He answered that everything was fine. What was he going to do with them? Helan answered that he didn't know. He said he wanted to go in search of treasure. Sometime later, in Ormus, a kingdom in the tropics, Louise was wandering somewhere in the forests, and she was very angry. Her assistant said that they had already received an ultimatum from Ormus, demanding that they withdraw their troops. She exclaimed irritably that she still hadn't found that idiot, and the dwarf said they'd already checked all the areas Ormus had allowed them into. Louise said there was one more place they hadn't been, and he asked if she was talking about the Monster Mountain. She was really thinking about going there, and he exclaimed that it was dangerous, that it was the territory of the beast Demon King. Louise said it was fine, they wouldn't touch her. After all, if demons dared to encroach on a member of the dwarven royal family, it would be tantamount to starting a war with the entire continent, since almost all countries use weapons made by them. 200 years ago, a demon king tried to deal with a dwarven prince, and he was killed in a single raid. It was a record. And since then, no one has dared to act recklessly against them. The dwarf objected, because Loger might not be here. That guy could have deceived them. But Louise was still sure he could be hiding here, and ordered everyone to hurry, or they would lose their heads. Meanwhile, in the Demon King's tower, Draxon's henchman informed him of a serious problem. Princess Louise of the Dwarven Kingdom was heading straight for their mountain. He was surprised and exclaimed, "What is this madwoman doing here?" And then an idea occurred to him. What if she found out about the mythical heart of the beast here, and came here to take it? But no one knows about that. Pure mana, dormant under a layer of magma inside the volcano, a mysterious power that he wouldn't trade even for 1,000 spiritual flowers. If he manages to absorb it, he will have the most powerful weapon in his hands. Excavation of the place leading to the heart is already in the final stages. Why did she come now? He ordered his henchmen to stop her. She can't come near their lands, but they are forbidden to hurt or kill her. The demoness nervously said that it would not be easy, and he indignantly exclaimed, "What did she just say?" Meanwhile, Prince Ormus Max stood in Louise's way and threateningly asked, "Does she want to die so much? These lands belong to the Demon King, and outsiders are forbidden to enter. Didn't they warn her from the palace? After all, there is a possibility that she will be killed." She became slightly nervous and said that they would not dare touch her. "Let him get out of the way. She will not return until she finds Loger." He grinned and asked, "Are the dwarves really that stupid?" Thanks to the all-out war they started 200 years ago, because of the death of their prince, the Zespin Empire, located near the Demon King's tower, made a huge amount of money selling provisions and equipment to heroes. As a result, the country, which was then still a kingdom, turned into an empire. If she dies here at the hands of demons, the situation will repeat itself, right? Now gold will flow like a river into Ormus. They were surrounded by warriors on all sides. The princess became slightly nervous, but her anger was greater, and then Max pounced on her, shouting that it was their turn to bathe in gold. He gave the order to kill everyone for the sake of their future, and the warriors pounced on the dwarves. Louise took out her axe, and, calling them cowardly monkeys, said that she would kill them, while the Demon King's minion informed him that the dwarves were about to be killed. Draxon nervously exclaimed that this cannot be allowed, that she must stop them immediately. Those idiots from Ormus, they want to finish off Louise and frame him, because if that happens, they will start an all-out war against him like they did back then, 200 years ago. He ordered his subordinates to send demons and monsters to that place. To stop them, they had to save the princess at any cost. Meanwhile, the battle was in full swing, and Ormus's warriors were gradually gaining the upper hand. The dwarves protected their princess with shields, and her subordinate said that the terrain was against them. They had no chance in open combat. They would clear a path for her, so let her go. Louise screamed that this infuriated her so much, she would tear them apart with her own hands. The dwarf asked her to calm down, and when she cast a furious glare at Max, he mockingly said that she looked ridiculous hiding behind that turtle formation. He would finish her off in one blow. He took aim and was about to throw his spear at her, but suddenly felt demonic energy behind him, and wondered if the local Demon King's minions were already here. It was Burje. He approached him and said that attacking Ormus was not part of his plans. Their interests are quite conflicting. Max and Louise realized that this was not the king of the demonic beasts, and this made them nervous. And MC told the prince that he would die today. He was wearing a mask that hid his face, so they did not recognize him. And Max exclaimed that it was some high-ranking demon. Let them kill the princess while he dealt with him. They rushed to carry out his order, and then several screams were heard, and he turned around, seeing Louise rushing towards him, who screamed, "How dare he turn away from her during the fight?" Her appearance made him nervous. How could a dwarf girl even be like that? He decided to deal with her first, but he was captured by demonic energy, and he realized that he could not move. He became nervous and thought that he had fooled him so easily, and then Louise dealt him a fatal blow and landed on a branch, thinking, "Where is that demon?" His magical energy had completely evaporated. The warriors immediately pounced on her, asking how she dared attack their prince, and she furiously shouted back that they were the ones who attacked her first. Let them go to their ancestors after their prince. Her warriors drew their crossbows and began shooting everyone who approached her, while Burge watched from the sidelines and thought Louise wouldn't like this. After that, he turned to the tower with a smile and hoped that the demonic king of beasts would rise to the bait. 5 minutes earlier, Draxon had sensed demonic energy, and his minion had told him the same thing. He said that it definitely didn't belong to one of them, meaning one of the kings had sent his minions to their land, and judging by the energy, it was at least a greater demon, or someone even stronger than him. He clenched his teeth in nervousness and thought of Prince Ormus fighting the dwarven princess while other demons attacked them. Everything was going too perfectly. He needed to check everything himself, so he went to the battlefield, and not seeing the princess anywhere, exclaimed, What's wrong with her? Where is she? Where are the alien demons that were here? His minions bowed their heads and asked for his forgiveness. But when they arrived, the princess was already surrounded by Ormus's warriors. Draxon became very nervous. Would everything really turn out exactly as it had 200 years ago? He had no chance to prevent this scenario. The wolf said that the princess was surrounded by warriors. They tried to save her, but she dealt with the enemies herself, so they couldn't even help her. Draxon nearly had a heart attack and immediately punished him and the other wolves for misleading him. Afterwards, his subordinates brought the hostages to him and informed him that Prince Ormus had been killed by the dwarven princess. What should they do with the remaining warriors? Draxon thought that if he killed them, he would be accused of attempting to assassinate the prince. This was a good chance to gain demon points, but kidnapping and murder would yield different amounts. Ormus was a small faction, but even they could cause problems if they realized that he had killed their prince. So he ordered his subordinates to send them back home. These idiots must report accurately to their authorities about the events that happened here, so that he would not be accused of something he did not do. After that, he asked, did they find the demon that infiltrated their territory? They told him that they had not found it, and he called them useless idiots. Why don't they use a little of their stupid brains and connect their animal senses to the search? They apologized to him, and he thought that if it was a high-ranking demon specializing in stealth, then it was no wonder they couldn't find him. Apparently, he would have to use it. He increased the sensitivity of all his senses to the maximum. This is a technique that concentrates demonic energy in the senses to improve their efficiency. Using this technique, one can track even the remnants of stealth magic. A trail of that unknown demon appeared in front of him, and he thought that if this idiot had come for the dwarven princess, then the trail should follow her. But the trail led to the mountain, and he asked his subordinates where the princess was headed. They pointed in the opposite direction, and he immediately rushed toward the mountain, shouting all sorts of curses. In a rage, he realized that it was a trap, and the dwarven princess and Prince Ormus were just a diversion. Even the demonstration of demonic energy was all part of a pre-arranged plan. He was taken far from the volcano. The goal of the king who sent his servant here was the heart of a mythical beast. Right now, Burji was in the heart of the volcano, frozen above a lake of lava. He thought that the lava was clearly not simple. He could sense the heart's energy even here. No matter how strong Draxon was, he clearly wouldn't dare jump here. That's why they were building a special structure to drain the lava. But he didn't care, because the scales of the black flame dragon could protect him even from lava. Suddenly, a three-eyed tiger pounced on him from behind. He swung his mace with all his might, and there was a roar, but MC stopped the weapon with his hand. He asked how the demon had managed to notice him from such a distance. The tiger shouted that he was the demon king, and then Burj grabbed his hand and offered to dive into the lava together. But he fearfully asked him to wait. The tiger screamed in terror as they fell into the lava, its body immediately melting to the bone, but MC remained unfazed by the heat. He looked at the bottom of the lake in surprise and thought that Draxon, after absorbing the heart of a beast in his past life, had gained a monstrously powerful regenerative ability. He had been wondering whose heart he had absorbed, and it turned out it was a phoenix. When he was a cadet at the academy, he read that the existence of phoenixes was documented. They had been encountered in various worlds. The fact is that phoenixes are able to travel between worlds. They are often considered divine beings and are even capable of ruling in some dimensions because they rise to the top of the food chain there. The strength of phoenixes varied, but they always shared one common trait. All demon kings who completely absorbed a phoenix became powerful enough to write their name into the history of their race. He walked towards the phoenix and thanked Draxon, as he was only here because he had absorbed this heart in his past life. The only power he had ever envied would now be his. He extended his hand towards the phoenix, and a bright flash appeared. Meanwhile, Draxon ran towards the volcano as fast as he could, and wondered who had found out his secret about the phoenix. Could it really be Burje? But that idiot had come here empty-handed. Besides, he didn't have any high-ranking demons except for his deputy. But he shouldn't have left the tower. A newbie simply couldn't pull off such a scheme. He had taken security very seriously, so why had this happened? He ran to the cave entrance, and the guards asked him what he was doing there, but he ignored them and ran on, sweeping away everyone in his path. He thought it was Reyna, or maybe Ugar. It was unlikely that any of them could have pulled this off. Ugar didn't have the brains for such a plan, and Reyna was from an ice race. The phoenix's fire would be like poison to her. That left only one candidate. He ran to the lava lake and shouted excitedly, "Is the phoenix's body all right?" His subordinates told him that everything was fine, but just a minute ago, their brother, the tiger, jumped into the lava. Draxon stared at them in shock, then threw himself into the lava and shouted that they needed to get him out. The beasts held him in place, asking what was wrong, and he shouted that this idiot was trying to steal his phoenix. Then the lava erupted and rushed toward the top of the volcano. At that moment, everyone's eyes were glued to a bright point in the sky. Draxon shouted Jason's name in rage, cursing him, and a huge fiery phoenix appeared at the top of the volcano, its wings covering the entire sky. Time passed, MC woke up, but he had no idea where he was. He was going to transfer the phoenix's body to his dimension and then take it to the tower, but his body suddenly absorbed the phoenix's residual mana, and he didn't even have time to react. He only remembers being thrown out of the mountain by a volcanic eruption. And one more thing, he's the Demon King, so why are wild animals clinging to him as if he were a princess? He told them to move away from him, and he had a strange feeling, as if he was not himself. He noticed a river nearby, looked at his reflection in the water, and saw a completely different person there. Meanwhile, in the Ormus palace, Louise came to the king and told him what happened, but not entirely truthfully. The prince and his brave warriors saved them from the devil's jaws, but he did not survive. The king said that this was enough. His son was born a warrior. To fall on the battlefield protecting the weak is the highest honor for one such as him. But it's time to end this. He slammed his fist on the armrest of the throne in rage and, in tears, ordered his subordinates to inform the Heroes Guild and have them prepare a campaign against the demonic beast king. At this time, Helan contacted the king to report urgent news, but upon seeing him, he became confused and asked, "Who the hell is he?" Berge replied that it was his master, but his appearance had simply undergone a temporary change. He should not worry about it and report to him. He told him, slightly confused, that the guild was preparing a new expedition at the request of King Ormus. Roselle Chant, a 10-star mage, would be appointed commander. She is a true battle mage, an expert in fire. Her second in command will be Valraf Disrod, also a 10-star hero, who achieved the heights through martial arts and combat. Of the 500 expedition members, at least 200 will be heroes, all aiming to kill the Demon King of Beasts. Their plan is simple. They're going to Ormus, and from there they'll head to the tower. MC noted that there were a lot more of them than he thought, and Helan said that there were only 2 10-stars, Roselle and Valroth. He was surprised that there were only 2 of them out of 200. And Helan said that it seemed some of the heroes didn't want the Demon King of Beasts killed. They were trying to influence this expedition from behind the scenes. Berge was surprised by this. People don't want the Demon King to die, so that's what it's all about. For people, the Demon King's tower is like a gold mine, brimming with nuggets. After all, even the bodies of demons make good alchemical ingredients, which fetch a pretty penny. In other words, there are a lot of people making a good living from this tower. Most likely, they simply don't want to lose their profits. Even seemingly simple things create a tangled web of actions and relationships between opposing nobles. And people are complex creatures. He told Helan that he should join this expedition. He would tell him about the Demon King of Beasts' weak point. But there was one condition. He must fall by his hand, and he would absorb its power. A hero who had killed 2 Demon Kings, he was confident that people's trust in him would be boundless. Helan smiled nervously and said that he appreciated it, but hadn't he considered that, having become stronger, he would escape its control? MC fell silent, giving him a frightening look, and after a short pause, asked, "Does he mean to say that the pitiful power he received from the 2 dead Demon Kings would be enough to confront him?" Helan immediately took his words back, and as soon as the call ended, Gordon contacted MC. Seeing some guy instead of the king, he exclaimed indignantly, "Who the hell is he? Where is his king?" He answered irritably that he was his king, and Gordon was confused. He wanted to say something about his appearance, but Berge ordered him to tell him why he contacted him. He told him that a message had come from the Tower of Demonic Beasts. They asked him to come there immediately. MC exclaimed in bewilderment, "Was it Draxon?" Gordon confirmed this, saying that it was he who sent the request, and later other demonic kings arrived at the Tower of the Beast King. Reyna thought it really stunk in there, and Ugar immediately asked what had happened. Draxon told them to first go upstairs and wait. He would meet the rest of the guests. They entered the tower, and he nervously clenched his teeth, thinking that Berge and Jason were late. Are they really preparing for a meeting? Are they weighing their options? If Berge is late, he will become his #1 suspect. The main thing is for him to relax and let down his guard. Meanwhile, MC grew wings, causing his hair to return to its original color, and then he flapped them sharply, rising into the air, and thought that there was no time left at all. Gordon said that since he was already in Ormus, the portal was only for him, and Berge excitedly ordered him to stay put. The demon asked in surprise, was he returning to the tower? He confirmed this and ended the connection with him, after which he thought that if he flew there himself and not through the portal, he would become suspect #1. But being late was also not an option. The main thing was to make it back to the tower and then arrive at Draxon through the portal. He flapped his wings harder, but he still lacked speed, just a little, but he would still be late. He applied more strength. Suddenly his heart passed mana through itself and his wings turned golden, like a phoenix. His hair also changed and he wondered in surprise, were these the wings of a phoenix? But he wasn't going to use that. His heart started beating faster. He felt it and was very surprised. It was beating. Now he understood why all those animals were sticking to him. As soon as he made another flap of his wings, he suddenly accelerated. The wind hit him in the face, and he thought that it was too fast. He reached his tower in an instant, completely miscalculated his strength, and hit the barrier, causing him to fall into the snow. He got up and thought that he arrived in time, but this thing was out of control. He had to be very careful until he could tame this phoenix inside him. His wings returned to their original form, and he thought, did the phoenix use its powers and go into hibernation? After that, he headed to the tower and contacted Gordon. asking if he was ready. He confirmed it and asked if he was already on the first floor. He confirmed it and ordered him to go down. They must go to the tower immediately. Meanwhile, a squad of heroes had already gathered in Ormus, and all their eyes were fixed on Roselle Chant. Someone asked if she was the girl who awakened magic at the age of 5. She was the idol the entire magic tower worshipped. Someone even wanted to ask her for an autograph, and others approached her to express their admiration, and then she waved her hand in irritation, called them losers, and said that if they were done chatting, they should get out of here. The guy indignantly said that this was not right. She needed to watch her words. Otherwise, their team's reputation would suffer. But the heroes, on the contrary, were glad that she insulted them, and she asked what she had done wrong. They were losers. What was she supposed to say to them? And anyway, how was she supposed to clear the tower with such rabble? She noticed that people's attention had shifted to someone else. It turned out that Helan had arrived. Everyone immediately started talking about him. He was a 10-star hero who killed the King of Lust, but rumors had it that his previous expedition had failed. He approached Roselle and extended his hand, saying they hadn't seen each other in a while, and that he would help them with this expedition. She smirked, calling him a loser with a dull face, and asking if he no longer wore that dirty ring. Had he left it at the base because there were no elves in the squad? He smiled nervously, suggesting they talk about it another time, and realized that she knew how he killed the King of Lust. If this woman started talking about it, his reputation would be dragged through the mud. If it weren't for the Demon King's decree, he would never have gone on the same expedition with this fool. Roselle said that she agreed to his help, but the king of demonic beasts was hers. She would kill him herself. And even if he doesn't try to stop her, he can't interfere with her battle with his dirty hands. He answered her with a smile that he understood everything, and in his thoughts he said that of course he won't do this, because his head is destined for him. The portal opened, and the protagonist and the others emerged. Draxon stood in their way and said, "Jason, Burjay, they've arrived on time. He'll explain the details of the meeting once they're inside." MC sighed, thinking they weren't late. They entered the Demon King of Monsters tower, to the top floor. Ugar asked Draxon why he'd gathered them all for such an urgent meeting. Jason smiled and said, "Rumor had it that a group of heroes who'd already conquered Lust had gathered in Ormus." "Was that why he'd called them?" He replied. "It seems they're aware of the situation, so he'd tell them directly." One of them had sent a high-ranking demon to his lands, and it had stolen his phoenix heart, which he'd intended to consume. Furthermore, because of that idiot, the second prince of Ormus had died. Naturally, their king immediately created an expedition of heroes to hunt him down. Ugar wondered if Draxon was hiding a phoenix carcass. Then he added, perhaps this demon had also killed the dwarven princess. Reyna looked at him, and thought that losing the summoned servants would still be foolish. Jason thought, a deliberate provocation of the heroic expedition, that was a clear act of attempted assassination by proxy. Then Draxon added, perhaps he was trying to provoke a full-scale, all-out raid, like they had done before, when the dwarven princess was killed. Someone wanted to take him out of the game, but he wouldn't die alone. They should know that. To kill this traitor, he would buy the key to the black box. Inside each tower, there is a black box. It records all the Demon King's actions. Originally, this item was only needed to analyze problems in order to improve future invasions of the heroic world. But Demon Kings who elevate standards to absolutes are usually reluctant to use such items. Moreover, purchasing the key costs a simply monstrous amount of demon points. Moreover, if the tower is conquered, the black box disappears along with it. Therefore, usually no one pays any attention to this. The protagonist thought, black box? He didn't expect such a move from him. If he opened the black box in his tower, he would have no way out. Then Draxon gritted his teeth and said that in order to open the black box, he must get permission from the tower's master. He thinks that each of them will give him such permission, right? After all, only a traitor would want to refuse this. The protagonist frowned and thought, what an idiot. Then Reyna raised her hand and said that she gives permission. Jason did the same. Ugar followed suit. And after that, MC also raised his hand, saying that he gives permission. After that, Draxon said, everyone agrees. Excellent. He will contact each of them separately. With this, he proposes to end the current meeting. The black box key is a one-time use item. Buying a key is expensive. Before a potential attack, Draxon likely won't spend so many points on keys. After all, it would weaken his preparations. But as soon as the campaign is over and all this will die down, he'll immediately buy the key and open Jason's box first. The protagonist emerged from the portal and thought, so before that happens, they need to deal with Draxon. He then said he'd quickly check the situation in the tower and then head out on business. Gordon followed him and, closing his eyes, declared that everything was ready. The protagonist said that in that case, he suggests starting from the first floor. He shouted, yes, your majesty. After a while, Burja Tower, first floor. Loger stood on the enormous equipment, raising his hands and shouted, well, how about it, your demonic majesty? A magical cannon forged in a hellish forge. He called it the Inferno Barrel M1. He had to look at its perfect proportions. He'd never created such a masterpiece before. Thanks to the Hellforge, it can easily use 3 or more elements to attack. What's more, it's mobile. It can be freely placed anywhere. Nothing like this has ever been created. It fires mana projectiles. It even has its own generator that can draw mana from the surrounding area and fuel it. It can fire at a single target, lay fire on an entire area, or act as a guard, protecting a specific territory. Simply all in one. Then the protagonist cleared his throat and said that he had given him permission to create the weapon he wanted. But was he sure sure it was all right? Gordon replied that it was true. His slate was a little runny, but that didn't change the fact that the gun worked. If it bothered him, he could take the Hellforge away from him. But he replied, no, he had to keep it. They would see how far he could go. Meanwhile, Lodger continued to hold his hands above himself and shouted that he was grateful. His Majesty. He won't regret it. There will be more cannons. It will be stronger. He will make dozens, no, hundreds of them. After some time, MC climbed to the second floor of the tower, and Kade ran towards him, attacking, shouting that she had already told him, and that he would regret deciding to train her. She swung her weapon, launching in an attack forward, but the protagonist easily stopped it with his hand, and then completely broke her attack. He said that she hadn't changed a bit. Kade pointed her sword at him and, running to attack, shouted that now she would attack with all her might. She used the Zespin family sword technique. Descending moon, slash, descending moon, split. She ran forward, continuing to hold the sword in front of her. The protagonist smirked and noted that it had gotten a little better, but she still needed to train. With these words, he concentrated a clot of dark energy in his hand, and Kade screamed in surprise. It can't be. How did he manage to reflect her technique so easily? A loud scream was then heard from the tower. MC then turned his gaze to his subordinate and asked why she was on the second floor. She replied that Princess Ernian was preparing to summon a spirit on the fourth floor. That's why they had temporarily moved Princess Kade here. The protagonist was surprised. A spirit summon? Meanwhile, on the fourth floor of Burj Tower, several bottles of used senile powder lay in the corner. Ernian closed her eyes and concentrated the energy around herself. She stood on a huge magical symbol and then chanted, Great Spirit of Water, Guardian and Protector. She summons her, binds them with blood and souls, and creates a contract seal in Ernian's name. She asks the spirit to answer her call. The next second, everything around was covered in water, and the magical symbol glowed, and Ernian said, Niruniel. Niruniel actually appeared in front of her and opened her eyes, sighing in surprise. She said, I wonder if anyone had the talent to summon her inside the Demon King's tower? Good. According to the ancient covenant of her ancestors, she, Niruniel, the great water spirit, recognizes her, a man named Ernian, as her contractor. She extended her hand, and Ernian extended hers in return. Then, closing her eyes, she began to rise in the streams of water, but the next second she fell right into the protagonist's arms. She looked at him and asked, His Majesty? He smiled, looked at her, and said that he almost missed such a rare sight. Excellent work. She blushed with embarrassment and said that it was nothing special. All thanks to the senile powder he'd managed to get for her. Then she looked up at him and added that she loved him, the Demon King. The next second, she turned pale with horror and screamed nervously. No, it wasn't her. Please, he has to believe her. The voice was hers, but it wasn't her speaking. The protagonist spoke, and she summoned a rather headstrong spirit. At that moment, Niruniel flew past them and said, Oh my god, what should she do? She blurted it out without thinking, but she really does adore the Demon King. How sad that she got caught so quickly. So what? When are they going anywhere? MC wondered in surprise. What kind of nonsense was this? And at that moment Kade, looking at her, screamed, What? What is she even talking about? She nervously raised her hands to her face, and Niruniel, chuckling slightly, added, Rumors of love between the Demon King and the princess are already thundering throughout the spirit world. She flew closer and added, That's an insane plot. How could she have missed something like that? So, when are they going on a date? Or are they still in their sweet spot? Ernian blushed with embarrassment and asked her to leave, and she was surprised. What, leave? This was the first time she'd been summoned in years. Then the protagonist told her to wait. Niruniel, should she tell him how she sees him now? She looked at him in surprise, then said, The Demon King is a handsome man, destined to tie the knot with the princess. He spoke in response, and he repeated the question. The color of his hair changed, and fiery energy appeared around him. He added, And now, how does she see him? She looked at him thoughtfully and said that a second ago, he looked like a torch blazing with demonic energy. But now he was surrounded by incredibly pure mana. He wasn't a demon king, but a spirit, and the protagonist looked at his hand and said, Just think about it. With this technique, he can deceive even a great spirit, and if so, other demon kings and heroes will not be able to detect him. And this means that he will be able to personally take care of the Demon King of monsters. Ernian said, A demon king kills another demon king? After some time, Gordon called the protagonist through a special device and, clutching his head, screamed, Your Majesty, is he serious? Where did you ever see a demon king go on a mission to kill another demon king? He looked at the system window that appeared and said that he seemed to have explained everything quite clearly. Not long before, he said that he needed to go away. Gordon asked, Where is he going? He replied that he would kill Draxon. He replied, Yes, of course. He must be careful. What the hell? In the present tense, he screamed. What kind of explanation was that? He doesn't understand anything at all. Then MC said he thought he wouldn't try to challenge his decision anymore. He was indignant, but that's different. It's one thing to disobey the doctrines of the Demon King's code, and another to kill his fellow Demon Kings. What if someone finds out about this? The protagonist continued to fly forward and replied that that's why he was dealing with this matter. If they couldn't deal with Draxon before he opened his black box, they would dispose of him. Gordon shouted that he understood this, but didn't he think it was too dangerous? He hadn't even overcome Arine's energy resistance yet. Spatial energy. Each individual subspace is naturally hostile to any other. It rejects any intruders. and tries to crush them with its energy. Demons whose power is suppressed by the energy of the world they arrived in become significantly weaker. The heroes chosen by this dimension are the main weapon in the fight against weakened intruders. This is the natural order of the world. But what about the demon kings? To overcome the resistance of the world they found themselves in, they developed their own answer, the King's Tower. The tower isn't just a fortification, it's a relay station connecting the demon's home dimension with the subdimensional world of the world its master travels to. By strengthening the tower with demonic energy points, its master gains the ability to draw more demonic energy from their home dimension, which is how demon kings gradually regain their power. Simply put, the tower's height reflects its master's power. Gordon then said that the farther he was from the tower, the less demonic energy he would receive, and he would become weaker. Furthermore, the Demon Beast King's tower has 13 floors. His tower, however, had a measly 5. Didn't it? He didn't want to say it, but even he couldn't be sure of defeating Draxon inside his tower. The protagonist replied that he knew. He had absorbed the Phoenix Heart, but he still hadn't fully gotten used to it. In his current state, any Demon King would have no trouble dealing with him. He smiled and added that this could only happen if he were alone. Gordon screamed. Was he really going to do it? Before he could finish, the protagonist replied, yes, he would take part in the hero's raid under the name Pale Ormus. The warriors, looking at the monsters, shouted, damn, they've driven them all the way here. It turns out there are only weak demons left among the creatures. They must cover their retreat. The demon is escaping. We urgently need to help the wounded. Then, Helan handed the potion to the wounded warrior and told him to take it. At that moment, the protagonist approached him and asked what kind of demon had happened to them here. Why were they so battered? Helan looked at him in surprise, and the protagonist told him to call him Pale. He shouted, Pale. Then he lowered his gaze and said, as soon as they had gathered a sufficient number of heroes, it was decided to immediately set out to clear the tower. They did everything as he said. They attacked him at his most important weak point, his tail. Thanks to this, they managed to weaken him. But not long before this, Helan abruptly turned and shouted. Roselle champed, it's her turn. But he noticed her kneeling on the field, clutching her staff. She clenched her teeth, and at that moment Draxon was approaching them. In the present, Helan said that due to Roselle's grievous injury, they had to retreat. Their raid had failed. The protagonist smiled, looking at him, and thought, now everything is clear. In other words, he's finished. Then Helan added that they lost, but they dealt him a very heavy blow. He will need time to recover. Plus, they killed a lot of his minions. Hearing this, MC thought, that means there is still time. All they need is to launch a new raid before Draxon restores the tower. Then he told him to wait. Roselle was hurt, and what was Valrath Disrod doing? He was supposed to be guarding her, and Helan frowned and said, Valrath, that idiot escaped. That idiot. Before he could finish speaking, Roselle came up to them and said that he escaped even before they attacked the tower. His sponsors have a vested interest in the tower's existence. They are money-obsessed, sick idiots. The protagonist asked, so it was she, Roselle? She said that if he wanted to join the raid, he was too late. He sees what their troops have become. MC asked, but they would like to try attacking the tower again, wouldn't they? And the next second she screamed, what? Of course. She will kill that flea-ridden demonic idiot. And no matter the cost. He took her eye. She doesn't forgive such things. Helan looked at her and said, but there are too many wounded in the squad, and they're out of potions. In this situation, they simply won't be able to launch a second assault. The protagonist remarked that this wasn't a problem at all. If they needed potions, he had plenty. With these words, he pointed back to the subspace that had appeared with a huge supply of potions. He added that these wouldn't restore body parts, but they would allow them to quickly return to their ranks. Then Roselle looked at him and asked, who is he? And why is he going so far to help them? Besides, what was this strange warmth she felt while communicating with him all this time? She had never felt such pure warmth before. And how did he manage to cultivate such fiery energy within himself? Then MC placed his hand on his chest and said, this. The next second, he turned his gaze to the wounded, and thought that potions alone would not be enough to restore the morale of the broken army. If he wanted to lead them to the tower, showing them something wouldn't be such a bad idea. He then revealed the Phoenix, and added that he asked them to simply follow him quietly. The next second, all the warriors looked in surprise at the emerging glow, and Roselle thought, that's it. The next second, the protagonist asked, they were asking, who he was. He was the Phoenix Lord, Pale. He had come here to slay the Demon King of Monsters. Roselle thought in surprise, a phoenix? A legendary beast? Could this really be the one whose overwhelming presence she felt back then, in the sky above the city? With the purity of his mana alone, he could rival 10-star heroes. If such a person joined them on the raid, perhaps they could slay that Demon King. Meanwhile, Draxon, the demonic king of monsters, sat on his throne among his assembled subordinates, and said that he had used more demonic energy points than he had originally planned to prepare the tower, and because of this, he had only been able to buy one black box key. At that moment, he held the black box key in his hand and added that they would open the other one later. His turn, the damn idiot. He began to open the black box of the king who had given his consent. The next second, energy began to spill out of the box, and Draxon said, come on, he must show him everything. He wants to see all the secrets it holds. Then he screamed in surprise, no, stop. Is this true? The black box records cannot be tampered with or altered. If it's true, so that's why he did it. He must tell the other kings about this as soon as possible. After a while, he screamed indignantly. What did she say? His subordinate knelt before him and shouted, Your Majesty, right now, there are heroes attacking them, he yelled in surprise. What? And she added, this time, a new 10-star hero has arrived with them. Ralph Schmitz. He's leading the raid. An hour ago, Ormus. The warriors looking at the main character shouted, yes, they must try to attack again. They have a true phoenix with them. The demon king of monsters is nothing. They must raise their blades. They will exterminate all the demons. The phoenix is with them. Hooray! The demon king's treasures will soon be theirs. Watching them, MC thought, okay, he's sorted out morale and fighting spirit, but he's not sure he can freely use the phoenix's mana in battle. Then he flew up to Helan and said that since the 10-star heroes weren't enough, he'd like to try to strengthen their raid. Roselle smiled and said she had good news about that. A worthy hero had requested permission to join their raid. The main character asked, who is he? She said it was Ralph, the strongest among the masters. In the present, he held his sword out in front of him, defending himself from the wolves' attacks, and she said he would be at the forefront of the raid during their second attack. At that moment, Ralph struck again, then combined the parts of his shield, releasing powerful energy, leaving a huge pit in the ground before him. MC thought, Ralph, the second strongest tank among 10-star heroes. His weapon is a special shield that reflects impact. He knows better than most how difficult it is to cope with this. After all, he was one of those idiots who killed and humiliated him. He wants to tear him to pieces right now, but Draxon is his #1 target. At that moment, Roselle said that Ralph had arrived almost immediately after the first raid, and that if she'd waited a little longer, they would have won without a problem with their help. The battle continued, and the protagonist said that confidence in one's own skills is good, but one shouldn't underestimate the Demon King. Roselle looked at him in surprise and asked, what? And he walked forward and said that Demon Kings always keep a couple of aces up their sleeves, and they only enter with him when they realize things are dire. Then he thought, if Draxon had already bought the key, he wouldn't have enough demonic energy points to repel the raid. This meant that, at this rate in this life, he would find out what trump card Draxon had hidden. Sometime later, on the 13th floor of the tower, the Demon King's throne room, Ralph and the others entered the floor and the warriors began to chatter. Are there any demons left here? But this is definitely the top floor. Last time it was swarming with demons. And then Draxon said, damn insects. He didn't expect them to visit him again so soon. He had to sacrifice something for this. Roselle said, monstrously powerful demonic energy. Could it be because of this thing? But there aren't a single monster in his hands here. And he absorbed the dark energy and said it was correct. He just needed to finish them all off in one blow. All his servants were with him now. The protagonist looked at him and thought, according to the standards of Demon Kings, the top floor should already contain the strongest monsters. And he found a loophole. He absorbed the power of the entire floor. The next second, Draxon said, fools, he will turn them all to ash, no one will leave here alive. Then the protagonist thought, now it's about to begin. The next second, Draxon howled loudly and released a powerful wave of energy around him. And then the warriors ran forward, shouting, they must stop, they can't approach him now. And the warriors running in front shouted, he's literally getting stronger before our eyes. This is the perfect moment to attack. Then they looked ahead in surprise, noticing how a powerful wave of energy was heading straight for them. Ralph held out a shield in front of him, but even his shield split in two. He was surprised to notice this, but the next second he threw it back together, sending a counterattack. Draxon then looked at them resolutely. Helan shouted in surprise, his magic. Roselle added, he parried the attack without even straining. And then Draxon told them to behold the demonic king of monsters. Those present were amazed at the monstrously powerful energy. He couldn't even breathe. His throat burned as if there was poison in the air. They began to fall to the ground one after another, shaking with their entire bodies, begging for salvation, saying they couldn't breathe. But the next second, the protagonist used high-ranking magic, Phoenix Protection. Fiery energy scattered around, and the joyful warriors shouted, Lord Phoenix, my God, he will never forget his kindness, Lord. And he thought, Draxon can't afford to gather more demonic energy. He said they would only get in the way, so they should go beyond the barrier. With these words, he turned slightly and the others shouted, yes, they are grateful to him. Then Draxon said that only 4 can move, but among them there is one whose mana irritates him. MC looked at him in surprise, and he shouted, hey, who the hell is he? In response, the protagonist only smirked. And Draxon shouted, Burgie, so stealing his phoenix wasn't enough for him, and now he's come to his tower? With these words, he suddenly leaped into attack, and Ralph created a shield, and the protagonist used a silence spell. He made a gesture with his hand, and said that in this place all sounds are under his control. Then Roselle thought, excellent. Pale. He managed to block the Demon King's scream, and his magic muffled the spell he was casting. He won't know what they'll attack him with. Then he used high-ranking binding magic, Sage's Chains. The next second, magical chains pierced Draxon's body, and he screamed, pathetic insects. Do they really think such tricks will hinder him in any way? The next second, he broke free from the chains and punched in front of himself, adding that this is not a fight, idiots. It's a hunt, and they are the prey that he will corner and tear them apart. He will be first, Burja. But in response, MC only smiled and said that he didn't hear him. What was he yapping about? The silent spell is permanently active. The target is the Demon King of Monsters. Then Roselle turned around in alarm and shouted, "Pale!" At that moment, the protagonist used her wings to fly away from Draxon, followed by Roselle casting magic spells, and the others shouted that he was moving too fast. They can't target him. Helan shouted, "What does it matter? They must follow Pale's instructions." At that moment, Draxon unleashed several slashing attacks and shouted that he didn't care why he was doing this. He saw no point in trying to understand the motives of psychopaths. But his problem was that he tried to bite him. He shouldn't even dream of leaving him alive. Burja. At that moment, the protagonist turned around, looking at him, and shortly before, he raised his index finger and said that the most important thing in hunting the Demon King of Monsters is speed. They'd already experienced his monstrously fast reflexes firsthand. They'd need to slow him down and target his weak points. Then Helen said he could match his speed if he used lightning acceleration. The protagonist replied, "Great, he'd signal him at the right moment." He wondered, what signal? The Praxon moved closer and shouted that he'd been caught. But the protagonist flew further, then turned sharply and used the Aherman sphere. Draxon was surprised to see this and asked, "Are you completely stupid?" He thought such a thing would work on him. The protagonist smiled and said it wouldn't work on him, but the sphere had another useful property. It could tell a vassal where his lord was. Draxon asked, "What good would that do?" There was no one here who could help him. And the next second, Helan, concentrating his energies around his body, ran at Draxon, screaming that his head was about to explode. He must never use that damn sphere of his again. And Draxon shouted, "Berger, you're crazy, you idiot. He's taken the hero as a vassal." The protagonist replied that he should try it sometime, a very useful investment, if he survived this, of course. The next second, Helan delivered a powerful blow, releasing energy that hit its target precisely. Wounds appeared on the enemy's body, and he uttered a rant. Mere pathetic words, and all for one miserable attack? How pathetic. But the very next second, a multitude of magical symbols appeared around him. Shortly before, the protagonist looked at Roselle and said that when Helan's attack created a hole in his defense, on his signal, she should act. Roselle. She should give him everything she had and take out her resentment for her lost eye on him. In the present tense, she said, "Demon King of Monsters, he dared to take away her eye, so she will use all her mana and kill him with one blow." Then she shouted, "High-tier fire magic, flame cannon." The next second, powerful energy pierced Draxon's body, and the others had to shield themselves from the streams of powerful energy. And then a massive explosion thundered, leaving Draxon's smoldering body on the ruined ground. He said, "Damn idiots." The protagonist thought this was unexpected. He even survived this. Looks like he's in for a treat. And then Draxon shouted, "Who does he think he is? He's the Demon King of Beasts, Draxon, Duke Alkine's right hand, and the king who will conquer this damn world." With these words, he unleashed powerful slashing attacks, hitting many present. He pointed his clawed hand forward and added that he forced him to do this. He will crush him. He reached out to the main character and shouted, "Berger," and he smiled and replied, "Wow, he's lost control. Now he's just a regular mad dog." Draxon kept yelling that he'd shut him up forever, and MC just kept smiling, and he said that he hadn't shown him this yet, his phoenix. With these words, he concentrated the energy in his hands and added, which he so cherished, in his volcano. Draxon shouted, "Berger, it." Then the protagonist directed a stream of powerful energy at him, and he shouted, "This." He was not finished with him yet, but from such a powerful blow he flew far back, but met in his path a counterattack from Ralph, which he released from a closed shield. He thought that his weak point was his tail, and at that moment, Roselle, with the last of her strength, raised herself up, and concentrating the energy in her hand, she said that she would not miss. She used high-ranking binding magic, the chains of the sage. The attack pierced Draxon's body again, and he thought, no, if they hit him now. Then the protagonist gave the signal to Helan, and he concentrated energy in his body, preparing for the strike. The next second, the enemy shouted, "Berger," and Helan ran forward with lightning speed, delivering a powerful attack. And MC told him not to worry. He would take care of the phoenix. He was saying goodbye, Draxon. At that moment, his head flew from his shoulders, and the surprised warriors said, "They won. Lord Helan, he defeated the monster lord." Then he raised his sword, and the others shouted, "Long live Helan. Glory to the hero." And he smiled and thought, yes, children, more. They must exalt him higher. The greatest hero in history will be none other than he, Helan. Then the others shouted, "The tower is collapsing. We must grab the treasures. We must bring recovery elixirs to the 10th rank heroes. Everyone leave. Get out quickly." And at that moment, the protagonist stood next to Draxon's severed head and thought, would they really give him a second chance? Although it hardly makes any sense. After all, to the very end, he was never able to spit on the laws of the Demon Lord. After a while, Roselle said, so that was his plan all along, to personally cut off the Beast Lord's head. Helan, whose body was bandaged, remarked that she was mistaken, that circumstances had simply worked out that way. She chuckled, of course. She sighed and thought, his sudden appearance in the battle had immediately struck her as dubious. But since they had fought tooth and nail, they couldn't be blamed. After all, they had only survived back then thanks to him. Then she said that she had the Beast Lord's body. Any objections? Helan replied, no, of course not, none. Then one of the warriors raised his hand and shouted, Mistress Roselle, she must look here. Here in the ruins of the tower, they found the kidnapped prince and all the princesses. She ran up to the girl in surprise and asked if this really was the same princess. At that moment, the third princess of the Akan kingdom, Lavinia, rose slightly. Roselle shouted, "Yes, it was her! Lavinia, what the hell is she doing here?" She replied, "Materials." Roselle was indignant. "She came here for materials to create chimeras?" She said, "Monster." And she continued to be indignant. "She showed up in the tower to get some monster's body?" The others thought, how could she understand her? Then Roselle extended her hand and asked, "The beast lord didn't touch her." And she said, "Gold monsters." She asked, "Did she decide to buy a monster?" She nodded in response, and watching them, MC thought he'd been wondering where this Draxon got all that money. He must have been extorting it from the princess. Then Roselle lifted Lavinia up and said, "First, she'll take her home. She's a good-for-nothing princess." The protagonist thought, she creates chimeras, but to show up at the Demon Lords for a deal? He'd thought about something similar in his past life. She really was crazy. Sometime later, at a council of the elders of the Heroes Guild, one of them said that the Monster Lord's tower provided them with vital hunting grounds, and they had gone to great lengths negotiating with sponsors to restrict the activities of rank 10 heroes. The girl added, "But they say someone calling himself the Master of the Phoenix helped the heroes win." The others were surprised. The Master of the Phoenix? Was there such a hero among them? They reported that he wasn't a member of the guild. Ever since the Demon Lord appeared in the Urzest Mountains, anomalies have been following one after another. It's time to tighten the reins on these heroes again. First, they must identify this Phoenix Master. The others replied that they obeyed. Sometime later, in the banquet hall of the royal palace of Ormus, the king wept loudly, saying, "Heroes." He thanked them for exterminating the demons and saving his sons. There aren't many treats, but he asks that they enjoy the feast. One of his subordinates approached him and said, "Your Majesty, it's time for him to rest." At that moment, Roselle, holding a glass of drink, remarked, "This is a rather depressing banquet." The cocktail was good, but the atmosphere. Then Helen approached her and noticed that she was wearing a beautiful dress. It seemed the princess had already departed for the kingdom of Akan. She looked at him and asked, "What?" He's trying to stand out from the crowd. He laughed and asked, "What is she saying? As long as she's at the banquet, no one stands a chance." She noticed that he was a suck-up, then turned her gaze to him and asked, "By the way, where is Pale? Why is he nowhere to be found?" She wanted to ask him something. Hearing this, the others perked up. "Mr. Pale? He too is eager to meet him, the one who saved them. He hasn't yet had a chance to express his gratitude." And then Ralph said, "The Phoenix Lord was amazing." The others looked at him in surprise and thought, "Lord Ralph?" He finally spoke, and then Helen put his hands in front of him and said that he was afraid to upset them, but Lord Pale had already left them. The others shouted, "What?" Meanwhile, on the Urzest mountain range, Berger Tower, Gordon said, "Welcome back, his lord." Did he really finish off the Monster Lord? MC nodded and replied, "Finished him off." And he thought, crazy. He actually did it. How are they supposed to clean up the mess now? Out of worry, he started waving a dust cleaning tool, and the protagonist noticed that dust was flying. After that, he sat down on the throne and said, "Now that Draxon is dead, the other lords will show up soon. If he's not there by then, it will look suspicious." Gordon said, "That's why he was in such a hurry to return?" And MC thought, and this fight made him realize something. He was still too weak. Even though Draxon had gone to extreme measures, he was still exhausted from his recent clash with the heroes. His finishing blow should have been fatal, but it didn't do the damage he expected. Not only his true power, but also the Phoenix heart. All of it needed to be developed and strengthened. The next second, Jason contacted him and called him. He asked what was wrong. He thought he knew it. A notification had arrived. Good thing he had returned in time. Then he said that today he intended to hold a council of lords in his tower. The protagonist was surprised. So suddenly? Was it time for the next gathering? He replied that it wasn't so. He just didn't know yet. Lord Draxon had passed away. With these words, he lowered his gaze and placed his hand on his chest, and the protagonist smiled sarcastically and thought that he knew it was his doing. Then he looked seriously at Jason and shouted, "Oh my god, is this really true?" He replied, "Yes, he has something to say about this." Besides, a new demon lord had appeared. MC was surprised. He thought the new lord had appeared just half a day after the previous one's death. That was too fast. Grand Duke Alkine. Did he foresee Draxon's death and prepare? But the black box had vanished without a trace, along with the tower. There was no proof of his guilt. No one would catch him. So he was going to the meeting with his head held high. After a while, Vivian Blunt turned her gaze to the protagonist and said, "So it was him, the famous Berja. She was the queen of the Blood Moon clan, and her name was Vivian." Then the protagonist sat down at the table and introduced himself. Vivian looked at him with interest and remembered how Alkane had sat at the table not long before and said that Draxon couldn't have lost so absurdly. This is impossible. The demon that invaded his domain seems suspicious to him. She must investigate everything there and report back to him. She must not take her eyes off this Burge. If anyone dares to break the law, it will be this upstart who disdains the canons and precepts of his ancestors. Then she replied that she obeyed, and in the present, she licked her lips and thought that such prickly types are actually the most pliable. Maybe she should probe him a little. Then Jason said, "Since everyone is gathered, they will begin." Then she rose from her seat and, walking forward, said that the Aryan dimension is quite interesting. And these meetings of the rulers, as soon as one died, how they all rallied. And just like that, together, they are looking for the culprit. However, something else attracts her much more. That same legendary Berja. At that moment, she walked across the table straight to him and sat down opposite him. MC was surprised that she was allowing herself to do this. She looked at him with interest and replied that she was simply curious. What kind of demon was he that he managed to turn the entire demon world upside down? He asked. "So what was your impression?" She replied that he was quite handsome and that she liked him. She extended her hand to him and asked if they would like to spend the night together. But he waved her hand away and told her to get it away from him. "You ugly thing." The next second, she screamed indignantly. What? She thought she was actually the queen of the succubi. How dare he? Then Reina said, "Vivian, would you please take your seat?" She looked at her in surprise, and Reina added, "This council was convened to welcome her, but they also needed to figure out how Draxon managed to lose so shamefully." At that moment, Jason thought in surprise, "Reina is running this meeting." And then Vivian giggled, looking at Reina, and asked, "Does she have her eye on him too?" And she closed her eyes and replied, "Yes, she can't think of anything else." She said, "Okay, that's it for today." After that, Jason said they would continue the council. The main striking force in this hero's campaign were the Masters of the 10 Stars. The meeting dragged on, boring and monotonous. The demon lords exchanged the information they'd managed to obtain. But the main and unexpected topic of discussion was the appearance of a mysterious master calling himself the Master of the Phoenix. The lords' opinions were divided, but ultimately the council decided to thoroughly study this Phoenix Master and exercise extreme caution. The protagonist thought that since he'd been hiding under the identity of Pale during the campaign, he couldn't closely monitor the other demons. From now on, he couldn't reveal his identity so carelessly. Besides, this person, Vivian, was now hanging around here with a secret mission from Archduke Alkane. At that moment, he turned his gaze to her. She blew him a kiss in return. He thought, however, that she shouldn't cause him too much trouble. Meanwhile, Berge Tower, first floor. Kade peeked around the corner and thought that the guards had relaxed completely. There didn't seem to be a single demon nearby. Princess Ernian was nowhere to be seen either. This was her chance to escape. If she got through that door, she was safe. She glanced at the door, then was surprised to hear someone ask, where was she going? She spun around, noticing Ernian standing with the water spirit. She began concentrating her energy and said, for the sake of the peace in the tower and her own safety, she would stop her escape attempt. Kade held her sword in front of her and said, God knows what will happen to her if she lingers here even a moment longer. She didn't want to fight her, but she left her no other choice. Their gazes met. Then, Gordon appeared next to them and told her to get lost if that was what she wanted. Whatever happened to her was none of his concern. That was human gratitude. Kade glanced at him, thinking, they kidnapped her, and they dared to claim this was good treatment? And why on earth did he decide to let her go? Then she frowned and thought, whatever trap he was setting, he was letting his guard down now. This was her only chance. If she escaped the tower, she would somehow survive in the mountains. Then she ran quickly to the door, thinking that she would reach Holton Walk and call for reinforcements. Then she put her hand to the door and felt a powerful energy, surprised. After which, there was a powerful explosion. And Gordon said that touching the door causes such a reaction. At that moment, Katie, injured by the impact, lay on the ground. Then Gordon folded his arms and said that those who have not received the Demon Lord's permission are not even capable of crossing the threshold of the tower. He does not advise touching this thoughtlessly. She will get into trouble. The next second, Ernian put her hand to the door, and then the doors opened, and Gordon looked at her, perplexed. And she was surprised and asked, what? She just felt that she could. Then she smiled awkwardly and asked, but why did it open? She was going to close it now. At that moment, the protagonist's hand appeared on the door. He looked inside and said that she opened this door herself. She decided to try her luck and escape after all, and she was surprised. The Demon Lord? Then Gordon bowed and said that they greeted him. Lord. He asked, what are they doing here? Sometime later, in the Lord's private chambers, MC sat on the throne and looking at Gordon, asked, Princess Kade tried to escape. He should throw her in the dungeon. He replied that he was listening, but his lord, how did this happen to Princess Ernian? He asked, what is he talking about? He replied that only those he had given his consent could leave the tower. But hadn't Princess Ernian opened the gates herself? He replied that the tower had acknowledged the princess, accepting her as part of their abode. He was surprised by what, and the protagonist thought that if Princess Ernian had contact with a high-ranking spirit, then escaping the tower and crossing the mountains alone would be a piece of cake for her. At that moment, he glanced at the screen that had appeared and thought that he hadn't been in the tower for quite some time. So why hadn't she left yet? What was she really up to, Ernian? Meanwhile, in the underground prison, Ernian looked at Kade behind bars and said, as she had told her, she shouldn't try to escape, and she gritted her teeth and said that there is no such thing as without reason and kindness. This demon lord definitely has some kind of devious plan. So that means she does too. Then Ernian looked away and said, actually, she came here of her own free will. Kade was surprised, what? And then MC wondered if she looked straight at him. Did she realize he was watching her? Then Ernian said she ran away because she couldn't stand this palace, her entire family, and her own father anymore. Technically, she was kidnapped first, but after that, she had no intention of returning. Watching what was happening, the protagonist thought, Princess Ernian, is she telling him this? And then Kade grabbed the bars and said that among the many princes and princesses of Hildren, only she, Ernian, possessed such a devastating gift. She was destined to ascend the throne, to trade such a great future for serving the Demon Lord. Ernian asked, doesn't this seem crazy? The ruler of Hildren has 62 heirs. It is the largest royal family on the entire continent. But at the same time, she wouldn't name any other prince or princess besides her. Kade said, what's the point? Princes and princesses? In fact, there are only 28 of them. and Ernion said that according to official documents, that's true, but what? Then she turned around and added that when she returned to the Empire, she would see for herself. The Emperor surely knew the truth. Kade said that if this were to come out, she wouldn't care at all about the honor of her family and the entire kingdom, and in response, she said, a runaway princess who simply didn't want to walk down the aisle clearly shouldn't talk about such things, right? Looking at her, Kade blushed with embarrassment, and then Ernion said she was joking. See you tomorrow. With these words, she headed for the exit, and MC, continuing to watch what was happening, thought, the secret of the Hildren royal family, only the aristocracy knows about it. Then he said, Gordon, he must prepare Ernion. They will go in search of spiritual flowers. He replied that he obeyed. After some time, the Erzest Mountains, Niruniel, holding several spirits, flew forward and said that they would go in search of spiritual flowers. Ernion raised her hands and asked, she didn't have any mischief in mind, did she? Then she said that she was probably very glad that she finally got out into the fresh air. Lately, he hasn't appeared in the tower for a long time. The protagonist stood next to her and then called her name. She looked at him in surprise and said that he called her by name, and he said that he didn't believe that everything he told her was the whole truth. She must tell everything she hid from him. He concentrated energy in his hand and added, if she doesn't tell. The next second, their gazes met, and at that moment, Dapner Filion was watching them from the side. He looked through binoculars and said, I found it. This is the demon lord from the Erzest Mountains. At that moment, Ernion looked at the protagonist in surprise and he said, well, there will be no new path. The next second, he sent a powerful stream of energy to the side and said that she would tell everything once he got rid of this annoying guest. Then Dapner screamed in fear. He had sensed him from such a distance. He realized he was using stealth magic, his doppelganger. At that moment, the protagonist said, cheap tricks. And Ernion looked at him and asked, was that the hero? He replied that it was true. He had been hanging around here from the very beginning and had been getting on his nerves. She said, a hero who has ventured into such a remote place to search and even hides in the shadows must be Dapner, the hero of the 10 stars. He is a mercenary specializing in reconnaissance and espionage. They say stealth and creating illusory copies are his forte. MC thought Dapner. He remembered that name from his past life. They said it was through him that most of the information about him leaked. This was the first time he'd seen him up close. Then Ernion asked if the tower would be okay. He replied, no problem. Meanwhile, near the tower, Dapner looked away and said that since the Demon King was here, the tower must be somewhere nearby. But why couldn't he see it point blank? The next second, the system reported, Mana Phantom, remote activation of the tower's invisibility mode. Energy consumption started. 10 demonic energy points per second. The protagonist looked at the system window and said he had hidden the tower from prying eyes. This ability would be useful to avoid encountering the heroes prematurely. Then he reflected that invisibility cost him 10 points per second. The tower would remain hidden as long as he had demonic energy in reserve and until it was completely depleted. But for now, he turned his gaze to Ernion and said that they would continue their conversation. She must tell him everything she was hiding from him, otherwise the doors of his tower would close to her forever. After that, she looked at him, then lowered her gaze and said, okay. She will tell the whole truth about herself. She looked back at him and asked if he had ever heard of the Child of the World tree spell. After a while, Dapner walked forward. Watching from the side, Krudu contacted the protagonist and said, Demon King, the hero has left the mountains. He's no longer trying to hide. As he'd suspected, it was just a double. The protagonist replied, excellent work. He must find the other clones and keep them under surveillance. He replied, yes, Demon King. Then the system reported, Mana Phantom, the tower's stealth mode is active. Demonic energy reserves 65,220 points. The points continued to drain, and the protagonist, glancing at the system window, thought they were on the verge of being exposed. It was dangerous. The tower had become much stronger than before, but it might still be too much. He needed to eliminate Dapner. Then Ernion said her father had probably sent him to track her down. The protagonist looked at her and said, perhaps because she was the eldest princess, he wasn't going to back down so easily. Or was it all about that Child of the World tree she'd mentioned? She replied that it was a long story. He said he wasn't in any hurry. A few seconds later, she began her story. Once upon a time, the kingdom of Hildren was a great empire. But endless wars had worn them down. Their glory had faded, and they'd become a mediocre kingdom. Her father was obsessed with restoring the empire's glory days. He believed that instead of an army of 10,000, he needed a single genius mage capable of single-handedly deciding the outcome of battles. But genius can't be instilled through training alone, and nuggets aren't easy to find. The protagonist was surprised. Really? And she'd said that right. The Child of the World tree was experimental magic for creating enhanced humans, like her. The protagonist's eyes widened at these words, and she added that while still in the womb, the fetus was forcibly injected with colossal amounts of mana to raise a magical genius with an incredible sensitivity to energy. The protagonist said that it seemed humans were no better than demons, but neither mother nor child could bear such a thing. Right? She replied that the mortality rate was horrific, and the survivors were crippled or died in agony before reaching adulthood. Only successful specimens were put on display. At that moment, a huge eye appeared from behind the clouds above them, and MC thought the creature had sensed the surge of her mana and was heading straight for them, apparently a monster of the highest rank. Then he concentrated the energy in his hand and told her to step back, princess. But suddenly she stood before him and said that among all these specimens, she was created as the most perfect, unrivaled genius. The next second, a magical symbol appeared before the eye, emitting powerful energy. But Ernian held the magical symbol in front of her, and with the help of Niruniel, standing behind her, created an ice barrier in front of them. Ice crystals then shot forward and pierced the eye that was watching them. The protagonist approached and asked, did the human take down a high-ranking monster in one fell swoop? Now it was clear why the king was so fixated on her. Ernian looked away and said that this power was literally washed in blood. He looked at her and said that, possessing such power, being the leading contender for the throne, she truly didn't want to return to her homeland, and she wanted him to believe that, and she indignantly shouted that it was the absolute truth. He must test her with the artifact he gave Helan, and he said that the Armani sphere was useless against spirit magic. He then concentrated the energy in his hand and directed it at Ernian, telling her to reveal her true motives. If this was another lie, she would know what a true demon king was like when he was angry. She glared at him indignantly, then grabbed his hand and shouted that she wasn't lying. She placed his hand on her chest, and he shouted in surprise, "What is she doing?" She shouted that he should listen to her heartbeat. There was not a drop of a lie in her words. He spoke her intentions. Then he felt the energy inside her heart and thought that he could sense it through the connection with the phoenix. Ernian's heartbeat, her pulse, her feelings. Now she felt anger, deep sadness, and burning embarrassment. Then she blushed with embarrassment and said that this is how spirits communicate. Particles of pure mana resonate with each other and allow one to sense the thoughts of the interlocutor. She truly was being honest with him. After that, the protagonist thought she wasn't lying, and then Ernian looked down and added, besides, as soon as she saw him, she immediately understood everything. He's not like the other demon kings. He's the one who can help her. He was surprised. A helper? What was she talking about? And she shouted that she was asking him to help her. She wanted to destroy her father and wipe the kingdom of Hildren off the face of the earth. MC looked at her in surprise and wondered if that was her sincere wish too. Then he said, okay, he'll believe her. In response, she thanked him, and then Niruniel asked, what? She looked at them in turn and asked, what was going on between the two of them? When did they manage to get so close behind her back? She keeps pretending to be innocent, but she turns out to be a sly kitty. And Ernian looked away, embarrassed, and said that it's not like that. It's a way for spirits to communicate, but Niruniel said we must communicate physically. Then the protagonist added that, in any case, he understood her sincerity. They would discuss Hildren back in the tower. She agreed with him. He added, but first she must find Dapner's real body with the help of her spirit and capture it. After some time, the hero Dapner ran forward. Clone magic allows clones to self-splitting. The more duplicates there are, the weaker each one. But then, they can simultaneously comb a vast territory. At that moment, the real Dapner sat in a cave and, observing the movements of his clones, said that the minimum height of the Demon Lord's tower is about 50 meters. He had searched such a vast territory and couldn't even see a shadow. Based on the testimony of Mr. Wharton Kolo and Mr. Hillen Kaggle, he calculated the hero's route and search time using his own method. The tower's location simply had to be here. But it's not here. What's going on? Then he noticed a sign on the map and said, his doppelgangers, which even many high-ranking monsters avoid, were destroyed in such numbers? Krudu then said, sir, they found his doppelgangers and dealt with them. He's not that strong a 10th star hero. The protagonist looked at the window that appeared and replied, okay, they should destroy everyone they see. He replied, yes. Then the protagonist smiled and thought he still had enough points. If he destroyed all the doppelgangers and captured Dapner himself, turning him into his minion, the entire continent would be his. Then Gordon contacted him and called out, sir? The protagonist looked at him and asked, what's wrong? He replied, something's wrong with the tower. The mana ghost is acting strange. It's hot as if it's about to explode. At that moment, Logers was shouting anxiously behind him, asking where his precious one had suddenly gotten sick. The next second, the system reported that prolonged use of invisibility was overloading the tower. The cost of maintaining invisibility was increasing. The cost of invisibility was 100 points per second. MC thought in surprise, overload? He wouldn't last even 10 minutes at this rate. If he didn't grab Dapner within that time, the tower's location would be revealed and the heroes would descend. Then Gordon said, sir, besides, the clones outside the tower were literally swarming everywhere. At that moment, Dapner thought his calculations couldn't be wrong. The tower could only be here. He said he'd already expended a ton of mana, so he had to find it. The next second, he noticed several more notifications about the death of his clones, while the protagonist said, Krutu, there's no time. He must comb everything around to make sure not a single clone gets near the tower again. He replied, yes, and then the protagonist shouted, Gordon, he must transmit the coordinates of all the clones destroyed so far. He replied that he understood. He'd thought, according to the rules of clone magic, if they stray too far from the main body, they simply can't move. He'd likely already combed the area around his real body, meaning he was located exactly halfway between the destroyed duplicates. At that moment, Dapner shouted, the Demon Lord has arrived in person, so he hadn't mistaken the tower's location. He's here. All that's left is to go back and report. At that moment, Niruniel peered into his cave, their gazes locked, and then she instantly created a magical symbol and shouted, "A body has been found." She channeled icy energy into the cave and closed the passage, but at that moment, the hero appeared behind her. She turned sharply and shouted, "Run!" And the protagonist shouted, "Ernian, the coordinates." She raised her hand and shouted, "Here, Mistress Niruniel." Then she directed a stream of energy upward, and the protagonist noticed this signal and abruptly rushed into the sky. He appeared before Dapner in a flash and called his name. He said that he would let him choose. If he wanted to live, he must submit. And Dapner thought, he's a demon lord, right? No. A phoenix? Can a phoenix have two masters at once? No, from what he'd heard, the phoenix's master was clearly a certain Pale, who was close to Helan. So this demon lord, could Pale really be the demon lord, and Helan his lackey? His eyes widened in surprise, and he thought, and the one he encountered earlier, it was like a spirit? Spirits assist the demon lord? That couldn't be right. So the crown princess, like Helan, was assisting the demon lord. Submit. A scandal like that, no matter who you sell out to, could make you live happily ever after. First, he needed to get away with it. The next second, he and several clones advanced further, and then he was surprised. A powerful energy appeared in the sky above them, and the protagonist said, "Fool, he gave him the right to choose. He must disappear, the hero of the 10th star." Dapner thought, this is the power of a demon lord who's not even a year old? Damn it. How dare they foist such a task on him? He should have abandoned this long ago, no matter the money. If he'd known he was so powerful, he never would have come here. At that moment, a powerful explosion thundered, followed by a magical bird snatching the scroll and flying off into the distance. After a while, the bird flew into the kingdom of Hildren, and a few seconds later, one of the king's subordinates knelt before him and shouted, "Your Majesty, Royal Intelligence has just received a message from Dapner." He asked, "Well, have you managed to locate the tower?" He shouted, "Yes, he sent the exact coordinates." And the king smiled and said, as expected of him, "He never disappoints." The subordinate added, "However, Dapner," he asked, "what happened?" He replied that the mana bird, Dapner, who had delivered the message, had immediately burned in black flames upon arrival and disappeared. He shouted, "What? That means?" Before he could finish speaking, his subordinate replied, "That's right. The mana bird's sudden death meant that Dapner himself, his true body, had similarly fallen at the demon lord's hands." The king then slammed the handle of his throne and declared that even the loyal and reliable Dapner had greatly underestimated the new demon lord. He then extended his hand forward and shouted for them to contact the Heroes Guild immediately. He demanded the full assembly of all 10-star heroes. This time, they would finish off this young lord. They would bring back his crown princess. Meanwhile, at the sight of the explosion, the protagonist, trying to catch his breath, sank to one knee. He reflected that, with the power of the Phoenix, his might exceeded all expectations, but his fatigue was simply insane. The next second, he began to collapse from exhaustion, but Ernian caught him and asked if he was okay. Wounds from the hot soil began to appear on her legs, and the protagonist, noticing this, said that her knees were on fire. Weren't she hot? And she said that the water spirit specializes in healing. Besides, he doesn't like to show his weakness. Who knows, orcs could be somewhere nearby. MC noted that she was right. Then he would rest for a little while. She replied that of course, he shouldn't worry about anything. Sometime later, the news said that dozens of succubi had invaded the royal palace. Alarm calls were being made. All demon kings must be destroyed. After reading the contents, Jason clutched the newspaper in his hand and said, "Miss Vivian, he definitely asked her not to let his minions leave the tower. He said to be careful." And she, sitting at the table and holding a glass in her hand, asked, "Well, he told you, so what? She's the queen. She's the one giving the orders." He said that as a result, the people were wary. He didn't want to find himself in that situation. She asked if he was worrying too much. They were heroes after all. He asked what? And she asked, to the demon kings, "Heroes are just food, aren't they?" She took a sip of her drink and added, "And the fact that her people encountered a hero in the palace, well, they were just unlucky." Then Jason grabbed his head and said, "Lord Duke, why did you send such an empty-headed fool here?" Then she shouted indignantly, "What? He just called her an empty-headed fool?" She stood up from her seat and shouted at him to correct his words right now. "She is the queen of the succubi." She climbed onto the table and took a few steps and added, "And not some fool, she is the best of them all." Jason smiled and, after a slight pause, said, "Miss Vivian, how many heroes do you think there are in Arene?" She replied that in the dimension she had conquered, there were about 10. Here, there are probably more, perhaps around 50. Even so, why make a fuss over a mere number? He smiled and said that it seemed she hadn't heard anything from the Archduke, although she really would never have come here. She looked at him in surprise, and he said, 4,732. That's how many are currently registered in the Heroes Guild. She started nervously twirling a strand of her hair and asked, "It's a joke? Can't be that many in one dimension." Before she could finish, Jason said that if this dimension had a limit, the previous demon kings would have conquered it long ago. She says she was just unlucky, but in Arene, meeting a hero is common. She said nervously, "That can't be right. The Archduke definitely promised." She remembered him saying, Vivian, that for her, the queen who conquered the dimension, as well as the queen of her race, conquering Arene would be easy. If she followed through, he promised to make her his successor. Of course, there was Deus to consider. He would eagerly await the results. She mustn't disappoint him. Then she cried out, "Yes." At that moment, Jason asked, "Did he really promise her the title of Archduke?" He probably also ordered her to keep an eye on Berge, and she cried out in surprise, "How could he?" He raised his index finger and replied, It's simple. He knows this method well. Use the informant as a disposable, then discard. She asked. Disposable? The next second, he directed his energy at her, forcing her face to the table, and added, to put it simply, they threw her away like trash, stupid queen. From now on, he hoped that nothing even remotely resembling a thought would enter her empty head. She simply had to do what he said without question. Did she understand? She replied that she understood. After a while, he returned to his seat and, glancing at the newspaper, noticed the news of Dapner's death, and several other pieces of news. He thought the world was shaking with fear. This wasn't the picture he had imagined. Vivian wasn't the problem. She could be easily controlled. The real problem was Berja, that arrogant black flame dragon. He wanted to wait a little longer, but now that things had turned out this way, he had no choice but to end it quickly. Meanwhile, the protagonist opened his eyes from his bed and asked where he was. Ernian, having tasted the food she cooked, looked at him and asked with a smile, "Is he awake? The soup is just ready. Will he eat it?" He replied that he would refuse, but more importantly, were they inside the tower now? They were on the 4th floor of his tower, in the Ernian house. She smiled and said that it was true. Beautiful, did he agree? He sat up in bed and asked how much time had passed, and how did she get back to the tower? She replied that he shouldn't worry, no one had seen them. While Gordon was away, she snuck in through a window on the 5th floor. Not even 10 minutes had passed since then. He replied, I see. She was great. She smiled, and then he asked, but did she do something to him? He clearly remembered how he collapsed from exhaustion, but now the energy was pouring out. With these words, he looked at his hands, and Nirunil said, of course, it was all because she shared her mana. He looked at her in surprise and asked, she said she cured the Demon King with mana? She replied that that was true. Didn't he absorb the summoned beast? Thanks to that, he became able to absorb mana as well. For the same reason, he was able to use this method of spirit communication. She thought, first hand to hand on the chest, now hugging. After this, she wouldn't mind dying. Then MC rose to his feet and said, Ernian, let this be their secret. He thought the Demon King's weakness was undermining his authority over his subordinates. He added, if she tells anyone. Before he could finish, she raised her index finger and said she knew. In exchange, she had conditions. He asked, what are they? She smiled and told him to grant her one wish next time. He looked surprised. A wish? If it doesn't cause any problems, then fine. She said, excellent. The next second, Gordon contacted the protagonist and said, sir, they have a problem. He asked, what happened? He replied, the Kingdom of Hildren has learned the location of their tower and is planning to revive the hero's quest. Here is a newspaper article sent by Helan. The protagonist began reading the contents and said, this. Ernian said that in his dying mission, Dapner discovered the location of the Urzest mountain tower. The protagonist frowned and thought that there was no binding magic like the kind used by demons in this dimension. At best, he could send a carrier pigeon. He attacked with the intention of eliminating even that option. Had he really managed to send it before their meeting? Then the truth about him being the master of the Phoenix, Pale, shouldn't have been revealed. Should that be considered a blessing? Then Ernian looked at the screen in surprise and thought, that's it. Then Gordon said, they say they plan to gather all the 10-star heroes. The scale will be enormous. Preparations should take at least 6 months. Then MC thought, 6 months. The tower has already been discovered. With so many 10-star heroes, petty tricks will no longer work. Things like an avalanche or a monster will not cause any harm. Eventually, hundreds of heroes will arrive at the tower in perfect condition. In just 6 months, was he really going to die again? Allowing himself to be used? Damn it, there has to be a way to overcome this, somehow. Then, Ernian took his hand and said, Demon King, she has an idea. Only a dark medium can do such a thing. One of His Majesty the Demon King's best subordinates. The protagonist looked at her in surprise, and then smiled and thought how stupid it was. Even hearing it again, it still sounded childish. Then he said that it seemed he had made her worry for nothing. He suggested holding an immediate meeting on countermeasures. He thought that he would never break until he took revenge on all the idiot heroes who humiliated and killed him. Ernian said yes, the only way to stop them was to kidnap her sister Elena. MC was surprised. What? She pulled his hand closer to her and offered to save Elena and stop the hero's march. He asked, Elena, does she mean the 13th princess? She answered that yes, she is her little sister. They have different mothers, but they are very close. That recent article said that Elena was kidnapped by the Demon King of Indestructibility. Then the protagonist folded his arms and asked if she was worried about her, although, apparently, other Demon Kings don't care about their hostages that much. She replied that it was more than that. She, after all, had already spoken of a spell that forcibly enhances one's sensitivity to mana. A child of the world tree. Elena was also one of those children. Unlike her, Elena had acquired sensitivity far beyond her capabilities, which is why she was born with a weak body. Therefore, she couldn't even leave her house and didn't learn magic. But if she lived in the Demon King's tower, where mana was almost non-existent, and could learn to control it, then her strength would be equal to hers, she was sure of it. The protagonist thought, a person with the same level of power as Ernian, that could be quite useful, however. Then he said, he was the Demon King. What other salvation? Only heroes do such things. She suggested, then perhaps it was possible for a hero? He said yes, she was a master at manipulating people. In response, she winked and said, she was a princess, after all. Then he thought, well, the heroes are already making preparations. There's no time for arguments. Then he said, Gordon, he should tell Helan to organize a heroic expedition to rescue the 13th princess. He replied, yes, Yes. And then he shouted in surprise, "What? Rescuing the princess?" Sometime later, the Tower of Indestructibility, the Demon King's chambers. Ugar stood before the guests and said that he had heard the news, Berjay. Now, when the heroes were about to storm his tower again, he still came to him. And why would he help an idiot who insulted their charter? The next second, the protagonist rose into the air and said, "What nonsense." He didn't come to ask for help, but to offer it. Ugar shouted in surprise, "What?" And he said that his goal, that the hero's goal, was not his tower, but him. He shouted in surprise, "What?" The protagonist added that he should place the 13th princess whom he had kidnapped on the first floor of the tower, then the heroes would leave immediately after rescuing her. And he shouted, "This is nonsense. He hasn't heard anything about the expedition. He said that the Titan's intelligence is mediocre anyway." Then Ugar frowned and said, "This guy, just because he keeps listening to him, is getting more and more brazen, crossing the line, scoundrel, insulting the regulations." The next second, he raised his hand to strike and used 3rd level Titan gigantization magic. And MC said, "3rd Prince Gaion, 7th Princess of the Bellows Duchy, 4th Prince Matiel, 6th Princess Kandaria." Ugar stopped his fist, and the protagonist added, "All of them are either excluded from the queue, deprived of the following, or come from a kingdom that lacks the capacity to summon heroes. Even if they are kidnapped, no one will organize a hero expedition." Ugar thought he had been keeping an eye on them himself, but he wasn't sure. Then he asked in surprise, "How did he know?" MC asked in response, "Is it that important?" He thought that these were the princes and princesses he had kidnapped in his past life. He smiled and asked if the tower's safety wasn't more important. He asked if the information about the hero's expedition turned out to be a lie, and the protagonist turned around and said that it didn't matter. He wouldn't lose anything by placing one of the hostages on the first floor. Ugar asked why he was helping him, what was his goal, and the protagonist smiled and, turning around, thought that he'd been caught. He was asking, the goal. He thought that in this dimension, defeating the heroes with brute force alone was impossible. Ugar probably also realized that he wasn't smart enough to stand up to the heroes. That's why he always cowardly kidnapped only those the heroes didn't care about. He hadn't changed a bit. He said what he wanted. He thought that Ugar was a big but stupid coward, and to survive, he would soon try to join that guy, his only ray of hope, Jason. Then he took a few steps forward and said he didn't need anything. He simply believed a worthy demon king deserved a longer life. He then turned around and thought that he would take on this role. He would lure Ugar to his side, and one of Jason's cards would be removed from play. Sometime later, in the Merchant Guild's stronghold, there was a golden moon. The teleportation magic circle was in effect. The protagonist thought that now that they had dealt with Ugar, he asked if the preparations were complete, and Helan placed his hand on his chest and answered, yes, as he had ordered, they could leave at any time. Roselle said she had taken charge of the tower's conquest plan. She had already climbed it a couple of times. The mercenary captain smiled and said, the Red Falcon Mercenary Guild was all assembled. He should let them demonstrate their strength. Then MC said that this should be enough. He thought that they would go beyond the first floor anyway. After that, he said, Amon, Granada, how are things with the elf slaves? Amon smiled and said that there were 33 elves here, rescued from all corners of the continent. Granada added that they all swore allegiance to him. The merchant, Jetson, said that thanks to him, the negotiations went smoothly. The protagonist said, excellent work. They will meet later. With these words, he tossed a bag of money to the merchant, who thanked him in return. After that, the protagonist looked at the others and said that they were now moving out, the goal being the rescue of the 13th princess. The others agreed with him. Sometime later, the Golden Moon Trading Guild, an underground warehouse. The protagonist looked at Granada and asked, so they swore allegiance? He answered, that's right. They swore an oath with the World Tree. The elf said that they saved them from eternal humiliation. They could consider this a way to express their gratitude. The elf next to her added, besides, it's a great honor for them to serve him, Mr. Granada. The protagonist smiled and said, excellent. Well, he congratulates them. From now on, they've all become the Demon King's minions. The next second, he revealed his true identity, and they cried out in surprise, a demon? And the MC asked why all the elves had the same reaction. Granada said, it's obvious. What kind of Demon King would walk around like that? Then the elves cried out in surprise, Mr. Granada, what's going on here? And in response, he apologized for not telling her sooner. He swore allegiance to the Demon King on the World Tree. So now, everyone loyal to him must also be loyal to the Demon King. And the elf cried out in irritation, impossible. How could he betray the World Tree? He replied that all this was for the sake of revenge on humans. He would not be able to forget the humiliations he had endured even after death. The elf asked, revenge against humans? Then she began to recall the mistreatment of humans and clenched her trembling fist. She said that these idiots were hers and hers and hers too. Then the elves, one after another, began shouting that they supported Mr. Granada. Both he and she, they must take revenge on these idiots. Watching them, the protagonist thought, it turns out that even pure-blooded elves, when faced with disgusting humans, can stoop so low. Then he summoned Gordon and said that he had given him information about the elves. He must prepare a way to infiltrate these guys into human society. He replied that he understood. After this, MC thought that in 6 months, the heroes of the 10 stars would gather together to kill him. Until then, he needed to attract new people, strengthen the tower, and expand his influence to gain support. Creating chaos in society is one of the key ways to slow the hero's advance. There were only 6 months left before all the 10-star heroes gathered, and he would do everything in his power to survive. Sometime later, the Tower of Steel, first floor. Many titans had been defeated, and a group of heroes moved forward and began to converse. So this Tower of Steel is worthless? Maybe they should give up mercenary work and storm the tower? Roselle stepped forward and said that the first floor only contained weak monsters. Helan walked further and added, but still, we can't relax. Then one of the warriors waved and shouted, Lord Helan, they've found her? It's Lady Elena. Helan said, the princess has been found. It's time to return. He will cover the rear. He must take the princess away. Granada picked Elena up and replied that he understood. They headed for the exit, and Roselle said, it's strange. Why was the Demon Lord of Steel holding a hostage on the first floor? It was as if they were being told directly to take her without making a noise. Helan laughed and said, perhaps, as others said, the Demon Lord was afraid of Lady Roselle. The casualties among their squad were minimal. Is that bad? The princess was rescued, so they should return. Roselle looked at him and asked, Helan, is he acting strange? He looked surprised, wondering what was wrong with him. She replied, it's as if he's changed. Back when he was in her squad, she remembered how not long before he'd shouted indignantly, stop on the first floor, they should at least reach the Demon Lord's hall. In the present tense, she added, he would certainly insist on breaking through to the very top for his own glory. Right now, he looked a little too relaxed. Helan laughed awkwardly and said she'd imagined it. He wondered if he really looked too calm, since the Demon Lord was telling him the whole plan. Then she added, whether it was an illusion or not, she even liked it. Sometime later in the kingdom of Hildren, a large banquet hall. The banquet was attended by many guests, and the tables were laden with appetizers. The next moment, the king said that if the dignity of the royal house were tarnished, the morale of future heroic campaigns could also decline. Helan, who had prevented such a catastrophe, in the name of the king, he paid tribute to his merits, was truly a hero of Hildren. Helan smiled, looking at him, and said, that's too high praise, your majesty. In this mission, thanks to the help of Lady Roselle, he was able to complete the task without losses. The king spoke, and modestly, a true example for all. He replied that he was unworthy of such an honor. By the way, your majesty, he doesn't see Princess Elena. He replied that she was resting in her chambers. Security has been tightened. He needn't worry. He replied, ah, I see. At that moment, the king became wary and thought, what a strange interest in the 13th princess. Could he really harbor tender feelings for her? If they were married, he might well own his house entirely. He smiled and thought, the 13th princess might prove useful. Then he rose from his seat and, raising his goblet, told the others to do the same and remember this day. The hero of Hildren, Helan, had raised that barbarian tower of steel and saved his beloved daughter, Princess Elena. They must rejoice tonight, this feast that he grants them, the heroes. They must remember, no one dares look down on them, right under the heavens. Hildren, they will be mighty forever and ever. All present cried out, long live his majesty. Sometime later, away from the royal castle, in a tower of a separate palace, Ernian activated her facial recognition mask and said, all heroes capable of sensing demonic energy are enjoying themselves at the feast in the castle. The protagonist, who was dispatching people at the time, also used her facial recognition mask and said, still, she must conserve her strength. If she increases her power, even heroes far away might suspect something. She replied, yes. The next second, they heard a cry from above. Enemies, we need to ring the bell. The next second, a man ran toward the bell with a hammer, but Ernian pointed her finger at him and said, don't underestimate them. At that moment, the water spirit suddenly expanded, absorbing both the bell and the people present. The remaining ones cried out in surprise. Water spirit, who are they? Ernian smiled and, taking a stance, said that these were the words she'd been waiting for. She's one of the 4 heavenly sovereigns who serve the Demon Lord of the Black Flames. She's a dark spirit summoner. The protagonist looked at her and thought she was enjoying herself. Then she pointed behind her and added, this gentleman came all the way from Urzest. She was then surprised not to see the protagonist there, and he shifted and rose up, saying, it's annoying being looked down upon, they must finish them off. The man then shouted, Demon Lord and the 4 heavenly sovereigns? They've come to kidnap the princess. Entering through the front doors so brazen, the protagonist shouted, does he think they won't notice? There's powerful protective magic on the windows. The guard, pointing his sword at him, shouted, you fool. He was admitting he needed to kidnap her quietly without alerting the heroes. He couldn't use demonic energy right now. The others rushed to attack, and he shouted for them to show the Lord of Black Flame the full power of the guards. And the protagonist said, it's true, he can't use demon magic right now, because if the heroes smell him, it would be too much trouble. But did he really think he could handle him? He turned, looking at his attackers. After a while, Elena was awakened by a loud sound. The protagonist stood next to the guards' bodies and said he had held back his power. If the tower collapsed, it would be too loud, leaving only him. The man gritted his teeth, growing nervous, and thought, the best royal guard, and they couldn't do anything? So he really is a demon lord. The next second, he began slashing his sword at the wall and, jumping out of the resulting hole, thought that he should retreat first and then urgently call the heroes. But then he was surprised. He felt energy and thought, the chopped stones returned to their place. He was thrown back into the wall, which began to fill with bricks, and he screamed, damn it! Dark Spirit Summoner. And Ernian, walking forward, mentally apologized to him. Then the protagonist said that if, less than a day after the rescue, the princess was kidnapped again, how much the authority of the Hildren kingdom would collapse. Even curious. With these words, he grabbed the door handle and, smiling, said that he had come for her, the 13th Princess Elena. Then he was surprised to see Elena throw herself into Ernion's arms and shout, "Little sister." And she looked at her and, smiling, said, "Elena." She said, "Sister. It's a sister." They began to hug, and the protagonist asked, "She's wearing a mask that blocks facial recognition. How did she know?" She replied that she read the letter she sent. Besides her sister, no one would have come for her along with the demon lord himself. MC thought, it seems the sisters really do think alike. Are all of their kind like this? And then he asked, "The letter, the very one she gave to Helan?" She asked, "Did he know?" He replied, "Of course, it happened in his tower." She asked, wasn't he curious about what it said? And he walked forward and, concentrating energy in his hand, said, "If there was anything suspicious about this, Helan would certainly have reported it. Well, they're returning." With these words, he released energy. And at that moment in the banquet hall, a subordinate approached the king and said, "Your Majesty, the 13th Princess of the Black Flame has just arrived." The king then threw down his glass of drink and shouted, "Idiots! Stolen again! The feast is over. How dare they mock Hildren? What kind of people does this young lord of the Black Flame take them for?"